Hello, hello, hello. This is Attorney Mike Rev. I'm coming to you from Chicago as usual. And as you can see, I have John O'Brien from J. O'Brien Law and Andrew Branca from the Law of Self-Defense. We've got a wild one out of Modesto. And sorry, I was a bit late. We were discussing this just backstage. So go ahead and ask that question again, John, because that's interesting. But I wanted you guys to hear the answer.
Well, does the audience know the general facts of the case? I mean, you just described them to us.
That's true. I don't think they do. We've got a police shooting in Modesto. The victim, the police officer claims that he was in fear for his safety and that he was going to be ambushed. And there's some basis for that. I don't know if it's right or not, but there's some basis for that. And this is where we are. That's the short version. Go ahead and ask the question, John.
Sure. So my basic question is, my understanding is that, I forget the name of the Supreme Court case, but shooting somebody who's fleeing is appropriate only under circumstances where the person is potentially a threat to other law enforcement or a threat to the public. So for instance, if somebody has a weapon and is kind of in a mental break, they're a threat to other people and you can shoot them even if they're fleeing. You can probably refine that a hell of a lot better.
Right, that's generally correct. I mean, before you can use deadly force, the person you're using the force against, deadly defensive force, you would characterize it, the person you're using the force against has to be reasonably perceived as presenting as an imminent, unlawful, deadly force threat to some innocent party, either yourself or some third party. That's why you see in the news reports the defense counsel here trying to bring in the facts that would support such a reasonable perception. Like the police had been given a bulletin that this guy was armed with a gun, that he was there to ambush police officers. So, just because someone's running away doesn't mean they're not a threat anymore, especially if they have a gun. Especially, I mean, I believe the family had called the police, the victim's family, saying that they were scared he was going to shoot them. So he was a danger, not just to the police in that view, but to other innocent people.
And that brings up sort of an interesting point, is that it's from a reasonable officer's perspective, objectively and subjectively at the time. So if you're receiving a 911 dispatch where the family is saying he's armed with a gun, it's objectively reasonable to believe that the family is not going to lie about that. And so that takes care of the objective reasonableness.
Unless you have reason to believe the family would be lying, not police officers allowed to rely on the information being provided to them on the call. I mean, none of us know with absolute truth any of this, but we have to work with the information we're given. And he's reasonably relying on what he's being told by dispatch in his own department. And you can't really undercut the guy there. And keep in mind that if that's his defense, hey, I genuinely believed, and my belief was also objectively reasonable, that this guy was an imminent deadly force threat to others. We believed he had a gun. He was threatening to kill people in general, not just police officers. So even if he's running from me, he's still a threat to other people. The state then needs to disprove that beyond a reasonable doubt, that narrative of self-defense.
That's a good setup for this. All right, I want to get going, but the other thing that's interesting to me is his attorney, and you guys tell me what you think. His attorney seems to know what he's doing, okay? And they are fighting this thing. This is a preliminary hearing. This is not the trial.
And this isn't taking place today, right? They're not working on Saturday.
No, this was last week.
Okay.
And by the way, I'll spoil that right now. The preliminary hearing's still going. It's not done. So this is a preliminary hearing that's
next
taking
week.
Days.
Right.
And I mean, this is serious stuff. But I don't think the defense attorney's wasting his time unless he thinks that there's a chance he can beat it here.
Well, it's a probable cause hearing in effect. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah.
My guy shouldn't go to trial at all.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. And again, it's fundamentally different. And maybe at some point, I don't mean to totally derail, but perhaps, Branca, you could explain the difference between a sort of stand your ground hearing and a probable cause hearing, depending upon your jurisdiction.
Well,
maybe I'm dragging a little bit.
They should be largely the same, actually. I don't like calling them stand your ground hearings, but a self-defense immunity hearing where you can, a defendant charged with a crime of violence, raising the legal defense of self-defense, can in effect demand a pre-trial hearing that acts as kind of a mini trial before the trial, where he can argue his self-defense claim and hope to get an adjudication, a finding as a matter of law that he in fact acted in self-defense.
Yeah.
Usually he has to, the burden changes a little bit from state to state, but in most states with these self-defense immunity provisions, and I don't believe offhand that California has that.
I don't believe so either.
Yeah, but in most of these self-defense immunity provisions, at that hearing, so once you're at trial arguing self-defense, the state has to disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. But at this pre-trial immunity hearing, the burden's on the defense to prove self-defense by a preponderance of the evidence. Another way of saying that, of course, is that the state at the pretrial hearing has to disprove self-defense by a preponderance of the evidence, right? It's just a balancing act there. That, in my view, is how probable cause hearings are supposed to function. That unless the state can show probable, more likely than not, cause, reason to believe this person's committed a crime, I don't think an accused person should be dragged into a criminal trial. That's not how it works in America. Any more than that's how grand juries work. If a prosecutor puts your case in front of a grand jury or puts you in a probable cause hearing, you're going to trial. I mean, the burden's infinitesimal in reality. That's not how it should be, in my opinion. In my opinion, a probable cause hearing should actually require probable cause before you're dragged into trial. And that's effectively the same standard as a self-defense immunity hearing. But most probable cause hearings today are pretty much rubber stamp affairs.
Yep. All right, well, let's get this thing started. And as you can see, I don't think anybody knows about this outside of Modesto, really. I think it's probably news there.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to say, at the self-defense immunity hearing, if you meet your burden as the defendant, then the judge grants you immunity from prosecution and or from civil suit, depending on the state. Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's one or another. But the great part about the self-defense immunity hearing is you get that final adjudication, you have a shot at getting that final adjudication of a finding of self-defense as a matter of law, without having to incur the time and cost and risk of the trial itself. A killing trial can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can take years to happen. And folks, I don't care how innocent you are. If you're in front of a jury, there's a 10% chance you get convicted. And then you're going to life for the rest of your life. At the pretrial hearing, it's not free, but it costs a few $1,000s, not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, they got experts and everything here. They're putting money into this.
Well, they can get expensive. Sometimes they turn into like a genuine mini trial before the trial.
Right.
I mean, in my mind, a self-defense immunity hearing should really be no more like a normal hearing. I mean, it should be a few hours. Sometimes I've seen them take a week, which is, I mean, most murder trials, folks, are a couple days. So a week for a trial is relatively unusual, and a week for a pretrial hearing is insane. But it can go that way. But you can hope to get that adjudication of self-defense for a few $1,000s over a few days or weeks. And the worst case is you're denied immunity, and then you still have your shot at trial. So It's not like if you lose the immunity hearing, you're going off to prison. You get another bite at the apple. A bite, by the way, that's much more favorable to you, because once you get out of the hearing, the burden's not on you anymore. Now the burden's on the state to disprove your claim of self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt.
All right, cool. Let's get it started. You'll see right from the beginning that not only that, but tensions are high, and the judge addresses it immediately.
Calling the case of the People versus Joseph Lamantia. It's case number CR 21-2254. Mr. Lamantia is present in court. He's represented by Mr. Wilson, who's present. The people are represented by Mr. Muri, and Mr. Mendoza is here also, I think, sitting second chair. This case is on for preliminary hearing today. Are all sides ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Before calling this case, I was advised by the attorneys that there was some sort of scuffle outside of this hearing in this courthouse. I'm putting everybody on notice that there shall not be any kinds of arguments, conflict in this department. And if that happens, you're not going to be here. I will ask the persons who are responsible to leave. So I don't want to have to do that. I'm just going to ask you all to behave as professionally and civilly as you know how. I know it's hard, but I have a job to do here, and that's to make sure there's order in this department, and I'm going to do my job. Any motions or stipulations before we get started?
A couple of stipulations, Your Honor. The first stipulation is that with some explanation of how the process works, there'll be a stipulation that the video, body-worn camera of Officer Lamantia that'll be shown by John Locke is a true and correct copy of the body-worn camera video that was taken and uploaded into the system.
Is this the
So
prosecutor?
the body-worn camera that, of Officer Lamantia was,
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
Is this the prosecutor speaking off cam? I mean, that's the defendant on the right. I presume that's his counsel next to him.
Yeah,
Is that the two guys also on?
It's good that you point that out. Since the defendant suited up, that's Mr. Lamantia all the way to the right.
Yeah.
But he looks like an attorney because he suited up for the deal. Defense attorney right next to him. The prosecutor is speaking off camera. That happens a fair amount because they just keep this shot and then the witness.
Okay. All right. And those two other guys must be part of the defense team then.
Nah, I think those are part of the prosecution team.
No kidding. They're that close, huh?
Yeah, they got them bunched right next to each other.
And that's uncomfortable.
And apparently there's as you heard, there's stuff going on outside the courthouse. You know, the tensions are going to run high. You've got a dead person here.
They can't afford 2 desks.
No, they are right next to each other.
What was the race of the race
always like that.
here? Is there a racial dynamic here? White officer? Is it a black suspect who was killed?
I you know what? I don't know. I believe
Not that it should matter, but that's the world we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
is true and correct.
Was uploaded to the system. The request was made by John Locke to have access sent to our office. John Locke obtained that access and has put that video as is on a disc, which is what we'll be playing here in court.
So essentially, chain of custody is what you're stipulating to.
Yeah, although there will be some explanation on how that system worked to get it. Very minor.
Do you stipulate, Mr. Wilson, accordingly? All right. Any other motions or stipulations?
One other, Your Honor, that I don't think it's Robert. Trevor Robert Seaver, the individual that was involved in this incident that was shot and killed, is the same individual to which Dr. Beck will be testifying regarding the autopsy.
So the Robert Seaver is the individual that Dr. Beck performed, I'm sorry?
Trevor Robert Seaver.
Trevor Robert Seaver is the individual that Dr. Beck performed the autopsy on.
And he was also the individual shot in this incident with Officer Lamantia.
Do you so stipulate?
Yes, Your Honor, and just so we're clear, the stipulations for the purposes of preliminary hearing only.
That's what I understood, but
Yeah.
thank you
That's
for
right.
clarifying. Okay. Anything else before we get started?
No.
You may proceed with your first witness.
People will call Allison Stewart.
Your Honor, I apologize. I would move to exclude any witnesses from the courtroom.
All right. I don't know who your witnesses are, but I'm going to grant that motion, and that's for both sides.
None in person.
And Mr. Mayor, you're going to have to be the one that keeps an eye on who's here.
You can raise your right hand.
All the other officers are, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All the other officers are outside, Your Honor. I don't believe we will have any other civilian witnesses.
All right. Apologies.
Do you solemnly state that the evidence you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
We're getting to
Have a seat, please.
It's a sign of a deeply professional prosecution.
And Mr. Mayor, you didn't ask for your investigating officer to be designated investigating officer. Do you move that? Is there any objection to that, Mr. Wilson?
None.
So that's granted. All right, now you may proceed.
State your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
Allison Stewart, Stewart.
And back in December of 2020, you go by that name?
Yes, Allison Seaver.
S-E-V-E-R?
Yes,
And that's your maiden name?
yes.
And where did you live?
2005 Sandpoint Drive.
And we're talking about back in December.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't hear the address. 2005 what?
Sandpoint,
How do you spell that?
Sandpoint.
Two different words, right?
All one word.
Oh, all one word.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, thank you.
What city is that in?
Modesto,
And do you know the county that's in?
this county.
This county, Stanislaus County?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fair answer.
On December 29th of 2020, who else was at the residence at that time?
My mom, Darlene, and then my stepdad, Ray.
And your mom is Darlene Ruiz,
Yes,
and your stepdad is?
Ray Ruiz.
Okay. At some point in the middle of that morning, did you become aware of a dispute that arose?
Yes.
And who was that dispute between?
It was between Trevor and then his brother, Kyle.
Okay. And did that dispute, now Kyle, was he at the residence?
No,
Okay. Did that dispute spill over to the individuals in the residence?
wouldn't say so.
Okay, well, did you become aware of comments made towards your mother?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And based on those
Objection vague as to who made comments?
Oh,
well, let me ask, who made the comments that caused concern?
Trevor.
Okay. And based on those comments, what did you do?
My mom asked me to call 911.
Okay. And did you call 911?
Yes.
Now, where did Trevor live?
At 2005 Sandpoint Drive with us.
I mean, this already looks like a bad witness for the prosecution. They must be fronting it.
Yeah. And, by the way, folks, I checked. The victim here is a white guy, which shouldn't matter, right? But unfortunately, that's the world we live in. If it had been a black victim, it would be much more difficult for this officer to get anything like a fair trial in California for sure. But fortunately, it looks like we'll have a case where we can just argue the actual law and evidence without all that racial craziness around it.
Oh, God forbid that ever be the case. But no, as a practical matter, I'd like to ask both of you. Am I the only one that doesn't like somebody questioning a witness from a seating position as opposed to at a podium? There's just something odd about that to me.
I don't know.
So
I've
this
done
guy
it.
on the far left is asking questions. It's hard to tell with the quality of the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like it.
And then he bounces around because they have to do like audio visual stuff as we go through this.
Okay, so maybe all right. That might be my misinterpretation.
Yeah, I've done it in very lax hearings, but this is pretty formal.
And we're talking about it. It's a serious case, right? Somebody was killed.
Right.
Someone's looking at life in prison if they get convicted. And, police officers don't tend to do well in California prisons. No, I would definitely, I mean, part of this is theater, right? I want the jury, the judge in this case, of course, I want the attention on me if I'm questioning the witness, me and the witness. I just don't want to look like I'm one of a panel of guys. I mean, it's we're not bullshitting about a ball game here.
Yeah. You'll like the defense attorney. He's more gregarious that way.
And was he there at that time?
Yes.
He was at home?
He was at home for a little bit, and then he went to the park. And when he was at the park, that's when he called my mom.
Texting?
He called her first, then texted her.
It's my chat. What are you gonna do?
What was the reason that you called 911?
Knuckleheads make me laugh.
Trevor called my mom and asked her to. And so my mom asked me to call 911 since she was on the phone with Trevor still.
Okay. And when did someone answer at 911?
Yes.
And when they answered, did you ask for anything from them?
Not that I can remember. Okay.
Well, what was your purpose in calling 911?
That was an
My mom
interesting
just
answer.
told me to call 911. I wasn't even sure for what.
Okay. And let me ask you this. What was the first thing you said to the dispatcher at 911?
I think it was somewhere along the lines is we need help. My brother is.
Okay. Let me ask you this. You think would it refresh your recollection to look at the transcript?
Yes.
Cut off your own witness. You did not prep them.
Can I be told what he's showing her?
Usually there's a
No.
discussion about bait stamp being handed to the witness.
I understand.
It's Rob Hove's page 14 of 60.
Okay, is our Bates number on it?
Bates of 50. Just looking at the portion that has the names, if you can just review the first four to yourself. Does that refresh your recollection as to what you asked of the dispatch? At
Yes.
911?
Yes.
And what was that?
I asked for the police to come to the house.
Okay, and that house was at 2005 Sandpoint?
Yes.
And what did you tell him the reason that you needed the police to come to the house was?
I said that my brother told us that he bought a gun the night before and he was coming to the house.
And did you tell him that he said anything else at that point besides coming to the house?
At that point, no. Later on in the call, I did.
Okay, and later on in the call, what did you tell the dispatcher that he also said?
that he said that we to leave the house or something bad will happen.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to review that transcript?
Yes, please.
Same page. So it said he told you he bought a gun and that he was coming to the house. Did he tell you anything else, descriptions of why he was coming to the house?
He never told me. He was just telling my mom that.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Did you tell the dispatch that he indicated another reason that what was going to happen when he came to the house?
I said on the 911 call that he said to leave the house or something, or watch what will happen to you guys.
In your continued discussions with 911, did you tell 911 what you and your mother and stepfather were going to do?
Yes,
And what did you tell them?
that we were leaving the house.
And did you tell them where you were going?
Yes,
And where were
to
you going?
Victory Life Church.
And that's the church. Do you know what corner that church is on, or near what corner?
It's on Rosemore and Woodland.
Rosemore and what? Woodland and Woodland. Thank you.
Now, that was when you called 911, correct?
Yes,
Did they call you back at some point?
yes.
And where were you when they called you back?
We were still at the Victory Life Church.
So you'd already arrived there.
Yes.
The call you made to 911, where were you?
When I first made it, we were at the house leaving.
Okay, so in between the call that you made and the call that they made to you, you guys had left the house and gone to Victory Life Church?
Probably
Yes,
just length.
And where at the church were you?
in the back of the parking lot.
Now, let me get a little bit of description of what you mean by back of the parking lot. Is that a portion of the parking lot that extends around behind the church, or is it just the back of the parking lot closest to the church?
It extends behind the church, so we went behind the church.
And when they called, did you tell them where you thought your brother was at that point?
Yes,
And where was that?
walking back to the house, 2005 Sandpoint Drive.
Okay, and did you provide them a description of what he was wearing, Trevor?
Yes.
What was that description?
From what I can recall, I said like a charcoal gray sweatpants and a black hoodie and a beanie.
Okay, did you tell him the color of the beanie?
I can't remember.
Okay. Sometime shortly after that call began, did you indicate that your mother had received another text?
Yes,
And what was that text?
that the front door was open and he was going to put 9 holes in the wall.
Is this the state just getting the most damaging witness out? What happened?
They're not as bad as the prosecution in the New Mexico case that we all just did, the Cummings case.
Right.
But I don't know if they don't seem to have their heart in it.
No, the issue is this is poor preparation. This is your witness. At the very least, what you can do is have her have pseudo-scripted answers. You can't tell her what to say technically, but everybody knows what happens behind closed doors. It doesn't have to look this absolutely shaky right from the get-go. And this is the primacy finality issue. Do you get it all out at the beginning, or do you try and filter her in somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if the state didn't call her, the defense would call her. I mean, this is good
Yeah,
stuff
that
for the
might be.
defense.
I mean, they might not have control of this witness. I will say that for the prosecution. So she might not be favorable to them, so that she does not want to prep with them.
Yeah.
And then the state says, we just got to get her out anyway.
No, that's a fair point.
That's a possibility. I don't know.
Be a little too harsh. But she seems
No, I feel the same way.
To the actual prosecution.
If you have control of this witness, this is not good. You should have prepped him. But I don't know if that's the case.
That's fair.
Well, her family has a website for Justice for Trevor website, and her picture's on there, seeking justice for her brother.
So that should be a pro prosecution witness here.
Yep.
I don't understand why she would be an anti-prosecution witness. I mean, it's her brother that got shot to death.
Yeah, but apparently she was scared he was going to come kill her.
Yeah.
So
Well, we found that out. I don't know.
All right, well, guys, I'm not going to be able to stay very long. I got to go buy a Christmas.
Are you able to see the map from there?
But I'll hop in when I
Yes.
can, and maybe I'll join you next week and see what happens. Just send me messages about what you're up to, Mike.
All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate
All
it,
right,
Andrew.
take care. Nice meeting you, John.
See you, Andrew. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do you recognize the area of that map?
It's kind of hard to tell.
So on the map, it has Woodland Avenue here.
Okay.
Recognize that?
Yes.
And then it has Rosemore Avenue here.
Okay.
That's
And
all.
then it has Sandpoint Avenue here.
Yes.
And then also Dan Wayne Court here.
Yes.
If you recognize those areas.
Yes.
And 2005 Sandpoint is the next to last house to the corner there.
Yes.
And it actually says it's in their Parks Children's Center, but do you recognize this area down here?
Yes.
And what is that?
That's the Victory Life Church.
You know
So
what?
the record should reflect that Mr. Murray's pointing to the,
To a
One
tab
second.
that on the map is indicated as Tender Hearts Children's Center.
They're asking entirely leading questions, which makes me wonder if there was motion in limine to treat her as hostile as the first witness.
Yeah.
Do you hear how every one of those is a leading question?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if they did a stipulation to allow her to be treated as hostile.
Well, you see that this witness goes a while, but when the defense gets her, she seems to not be hostile, but not be particularly friendly to either attorney.
But I just, and again, not knowing any of
Right.
this ahead of time,
Right.
every one of their questions is leading.
Right. Right. And the defense attorney is not confused on that. So you're right. It does make you think, okay, this is there's a motion to eliminate, just like you described.
And it's been identified as Victory Life
yes,
Church. The streets that she's identified are named on the map.
Your Honor, may I inquire, is this exhibit 1 or 2?
This is one.
Thank you.
And this larger area here, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
The Church of Brethren.
Okay, so that's to the facing the map, to the front of the map, just above Woodland Avenue, and it is also titled. So your brother indicated that he put holes in the wall and was leaving the house,
Yes.
and the door was open.
That's
Yes.
kind of my opening.
And shortly
position
after
for
that,
Robert.
did something occur?
I saw him walking.
Okay, and where were you at that time?
We were still in the parking lot at Victory Life Church.
And where did you see him?
He was on the corner of Rosemore and Woodland. So the corner across from the church,
At the corner across from the church?
across the street. Yep. Yeah,
Was
that
he
one.
on the west side of Rosemore or the east side?
East.
He was on the east side. of Rosemore.
Yes.
And did you see where he went?
He crossed the street going towards the Church of Brethren.
Okay, and did you notify that to 911?
Yes.
Okay. And did you eventually lose sight of it?
Yes.
And where did you lose sight of it?
When he was walking towards the Church of Brethren.
Church of the Brethren?
Yes.
Did he walk across? How far did you see him? Did he go all the way across in front of the Minnesota Church of the Brethren, or did he turn on Dan Way Court?
I didn't see.
Okay, so he'd already been out of your view at that point?
When we saw him, we went behind a building so he wouldn't see us.
Yeah,
So you
Arizona
reported that he was
Health.
walking towards the other church, the Church of the Brethren,
Yes.
the larger.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to review it and go over. Review a short section.
Tell me if there's any Modesto people. I would be fascinated to know if there are any Modesto people in the chat.
Of this transcript from the very bottom of 26, starting there, and then just go to where you see your name there.
Okay.
And read that to yourself.
Funny, we found.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
And did you give any further direction that Trevor traveled other than onto Woodland westbound?
He said that he was walking towards the church and it looked like he went down Dan Court.
And Way Court?
Yes.
Did the, at one point the dispatcher asked you if he was walking towards or away from Carpenter?
Yes.
And did you respond to that?
Yes. I said that he was walking away.
In that final conversation with the dispatcher, was there a portion of the conversation where you talked about either leaving the church and going someplace else or staying there?
Yes, that's when we saw Trevor.
Okay. Just before, just after, or while you saw Trevor?
While I saw Trevor,
Okay. And what was the conversation that you had with the dispatcher at that point?
the dispatcher said that if we don't feel safe, that we could go somewhere else away from Trevor. And that's when we just went behind a building at the church so he couldn't see us.
Did you talk about the fact that Trevor was now walking away from you?
Yes,
And what did you tell him about that?
that he was walking away towards another church on Woodland, and it looked like he was going to Dancourt.
Okay. And did that come into play in the conversation of whether you would stay or leave?
Yes,
And what was that?
we decided that we would just stay and go behind a building. So
Okay.
he
And did
couldn't
you tell
see.
that to the dispatcher?
Yes,
That's Modesto.
At some
area,
point,
my
did you
book.
tell the dispatcher that you could no longer see Trevor?
yes.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Thank you.
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Wilson. I would like to take our morning recess. Would this be a good time to do it? Or if your cross-examination is brief, we could do that now.
No, I think a break is fine. Thank you,
Okay.
Judge.
So what we're going to do, Mr. Stewart, is take our morning recess. We have not had our morning break. So I'm going to ask that you step down. We're going to close the courtroom. We'll finish up your testimony at 11 o'clock. So just be right outside Department 4 and we'll get the courtroom open. We'll finish your testimony. Please do not discuss your testimony with anybody. Okay. Kept on the record in the case of the People versus Joseph Lamantia, case number CR 21, TAC 2254.
You're welcome. Yes, I edited this thing.
And Ms. Stewart, you may once again have a seat at the witness stand. I just would remind you that you are under oath. Ms. Wilson, you may proceed with cross-examination.
Thank you.
Everybody for the last 40 years knows that.
Good morning, Ms. Stewart.
Good
I
morning.
don't care.
You testified earlier that you had called 911, the police department, correct?
Yes,
And you conveyed some information to them. Did they ever repeat it back to you so you know that they got the information that you were conveying?
yes,
And you probably don't, but do you know whether or not they conveyed the information you were giving them to the Modesto Police Department?
when they called me back, some of the information was incorrect.
And you corrected them?
Yes,
Okay. My question was, though,
Can I get clarification? When you say they called you back, who is it they?
911 called me back,
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
was it the same dispatcher or a different one?
a different one.
And so my question to you, though, was, do you know whether the dispatcher, now there's two, conveyed the information that you were giving them to the Modesto Police Department?
I'm not sure if that was correct.
Sure. So, and I have your transcript here, and I'm going through it. You told the dispatcher the first time that you called him that your brother had bought a gun last night.
Correct.
Then you told the dispatcher that you were leaving your house right now. We're just so scared. Do you recall saying that?
Yes,
In the transcript I have, there are several people talking. Can you describe for us who was in the car with you when you were calling 911?
it was,
Say transcript. Tell me what you mean by that. Is it a transcript to 911?
What it's professed to be, it's by a detective.
Just for clarification, so she knows too. I don't know if there was an interview done and there was a transcript of an interview or something like that either. So you're referring to the,
Yeah, I had the same question, actually.
Why is the judge intervening so much in the actual question?
She wants it clarified. She wants to know if there's some independent transcript or if you're talking about a transcript of the 911 call itself.
But the question itself didn't seem all that ambiguous.
She wants a clean record on that point.
I understand that. It seems like a lot of interjection, but okay.
Not a Judge Steffens fan, huh? I think it's Steffens.
Is it?
I don't know.
All right, well.
I thought it was Stanislaus, not Stanislaus County too. For the first couple times I did videos out there.
So from my perspective, it's up to either the witness to suggest that they're not familiar with the question or for somebody to object. The judge shouldn't just interject themselves. That's just
No, you don't practice in Illinois, brother.
Clearly, I do
Judges
not.
will jump in there all day and say, I want this record clean. I'm going to ask a question right now.
I'll tell you, certainly in New York, judges will shut the hell up. And even if you ask a bad question, if the other side doesn't object and they answer, they just let it run.
Oh yeah.
911 transcript.
Referring to the 911 transcript that is recreated, I guess, in Officer Pov's report,
Okay, thank you.
or Detective Pov, excuse me.
You may continue.
Thank you. So my question was, how many people were in the car with you? Because there are other voices that are recorded on the 911 recording. Can you tell us who they were?
It was my mom, Darlene Ruiz, and my stepdad, Ray Ruiz.
You also told them that, them being the dispatch operators, that your brother was walking from a park. Recall that?
Yes,
And then dispatch asked you what type of gun it was, and you said you weren't sure.
correct.
I thought I heard you testify during direct examination that your brother had told you, or you or your family members, to leave the house.
Yes, he told my mother that.
Did you tell that to dispatch?
From what I remember, yes.
May I approach?
You may.
I'm going to show her any specific one. Any specific page or just the whole thing? Did I have her?
What a weirdly
First one.
designed room
Yeah.
where you don't have any
So
separation.
I'm going to show you pages 15, 16, 17.
It's almost like you don't even have a well. It's weird.
Yeah, this is frustrating because they do a lot of stuff, but they just keep that camera angle.
Yeah.
So you can't really tell what's going on.
And 19. Closer. What I'd like you to do, Ms. Stewart, if you could please take your time to review that. And if you find the section where you told dispatch that your brother told you to leave the house, could you point that out for us?
Ms. Stewart, were you able to locate it in that transcript that I showed you?
No,
You testified during direct examination that you and your family were parked in a parking lot behind a church, correct?
correct,
And that you saw your brother walking down the street?
correct.
And you also testified that when you saw your brother, I don't know if you moved the vehicle or how you accomplished this, but you hid behind something because you didn't want your brother to see you, correct?
Correct.
What do you?
By the way, this is all weird, this fact pattern. I don't know why they're parked in a church parking lot. This is my second time through. I saw a little bit the first time. I don't understand why that is. And the brother's saying, get away from me, get away from me. There's going to be trouble.
What was the? I mean, was there like some sort of custody handoff or something? I don't know. Was it?
I don't get it, but I'm
Do we
fascinated
know
by
if it was on a Sunday?
Yeah. I mean, you'll see more as the police show up, but it just seems a weird venue. I don't know why they're out in a church parking lot, but that's where we are.
It seems
Want your
like
brother
a
to see you.
neutral place. I just don't know.
He told us to leave the house, so we were just trying to give him space to cool off.
He also told you that he went to the house and he put
Parking lot?
several holes in the walls of the house,
That makes
He
sense. Valerie.
texted my mother that.
and you told dispatch that.
From what I recall, yes.
When you saw your brother walking down the street toward the other church, when did you actually lose sight of him, if you remember?
When he was walking,
Then stay in your
past-
home.
crossing the street for Dan Court,
Just gone.
it looked like he walked into it or was walking into the parking lot of the Church of Brethren in that direction.
And how were you able to see your brother? I'm not familiar with the location, so where were you actually positioned when you saw your brother do that?
There's two buildings at Victory Life Church, and we were in between the two buildings. And when we saw him, we just backed up our car. So we were completely behind the building. And so I could
Why
see
did
the
you
sidewalk
follow
from
him
where we
if you
were at
afraid
first.
of him?
And you stayed in that location?
Yes,
You remember being interviewed by an officer, Raymond Reese, in this matter?
Yes.
Do you recall telling him that?
Objection, Your Honor. Only because of confusion. Raymond Ruiz is her stepdad.
No, thank you for that
Is it
clarification.
vague?
I need to read
Objection
below.
vague is the legal grounds?
Yes.
Yep,
Sustained.
thank you. My apologies. You remember being interviewed by an officer, Aaron Caldera?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You remember telling
You can tell me to shut up.
Officer Caldera that you believed your brother to have a gun?
I can't remember.
Do you believe, excuse me, do you remember telling Officer Caldera that, quote unquote, please God, don't let him have a gun?
Can you repeat that?
Certainly try. Do you remember telling the officer during your interview that you were in your room, Trevor was in the room next door, and you were thinking, please God, don't let him have a gun?
I don't remember that.
You remember telling the detective, same situation, your brother's in the room next door making noise, and you're telling the officer, please don't let him just come in my room and kill me or my parents. I was terrified, end quote.
I don't recall that either.
I'm going to object as to relevance, Your Honor.
How is
This
that
is apparently
irrelevant?
the night before any incident happened.
Sustained.
It's the state of mind.
No,
Unless there's a connection.
you testified during direct examination that your brother was at the house on December 29th.
Correct.
He was also there the night before, correct?
Correct.
And the night before is when these statements or this concern that you had, I know you don't recall the statements, but some concern you had about your brother's conduct in the house the night before.
Yes.
Then the next day, your brother reports that he had purchased a gun and that you better watch out when I come to your house, correct?
He said that he purchased the gun the night before the 29th. So on the 28th.
And that was the day that you heard the commotion in the room next door and you were concerned that he had a gun.
Threatening his
The
sister.
commotion was going on, but I don't remember being concerned that he had a gun.
That is,
So if Detective Caldera reported that, you're saying that's incorrect?
I don't remember it.
You don't remember, so it could be correct, you just don't recall.
I don't recall.
You can't do that.
what are you talking about? That was
Sorry.
actually the best way of laying out foundation.
In the
for
audience?
State of mind.
All right. If anybody motions to the witness when they're testifying, you're tampering with the witness's testimony, and I'm not going to tolerate that tampering. Can you tell me who did it? Okay. Do not motion, signal, indicate anything to a witness who's testifying. I need to hear the truth, and you're interfering with my duties to hear what the witness's testimony is. If anything like that happens again, you will be asked to leave and not return. Is everyone clear about that? All right, you may continue.
That was one of the cleanest ways.
No, I don't have anything further at this time.
All
All right, thank you. Is there a redirect?
I've ever seen in my entire life.
Your discussion with Detective Caldera. Did any of that take place over 911?
No,
Did you tell 911 about any of that?
no,
So to your knowledge, law enforcement had no knowledge of any incident the night before until you were interviewed after the incident, correct?
correct.
Anything else? Nothing further.
Any recross?
Just briefly. I understand that you were interviewed after this incident by Detective Caldera.
Yes,
However, the information you were sharing with Detective Caldera was information that had happened the very night before this incident with your brother telling you that he got a gun. Yes?
he did not tell me. He told my mother.
Okay. But knowing that information, you all left your house, correct?
That day, yes, on the 29th.
Which is, again, I'm splitting hairs here, but that very evening, in the room next to your room at your house is when you were concerned about him having a gun and you reported that to Detective Caldera, correct?
I don't recall.
This is recross.
I know you don't recall right now, You possibly said that, you just don't recall, right?
And he's still doing
Correct.
a closed-ended question.
Anything else? May this witness be excused? All right, Ms. Stewart, your responsibilities to testify have now concluded. This preliminary hearing is ongoing, so for that reason, do not discuss your testimony with anybody.
Have the rules of evidence just gone to hell in Modesto, California?
Do you
Is that
solemnly
where
say
we're
that
at?
the evidence you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
On redirect, you're asking direct
You can have a
questions.
seat here, please.
You're asking cross questions. Oh my God. By the way, I think that the defense did a fantastic job cross-examining the witness.
Officer Buza.
Instead of that,
You think that who?
I'm losing my mind.
Which I think the defense did all right, because I started this with you know, I started seeing a thing, oh, he shot while he's running away. I'm thinking, okay, this guy's going away, and I see this sister talking about it, about her brother, who's the victim in this case. I'm thinking, he's scary. This guy's scary.
Yeah.
I don't think it's irrational for someone to. I'm not there yet. I have to watch all of it, but I am now thinking.
As a practical matter, I think that they did a fantastic job because the state brought the witness. They
Right.
did a good job crossing her and setting out the scene of where this is a violent individual, potentially with a weapon, that is,
Yeah.
we'll see later, fleeing from the cops. And a violent individual, a potentially violent individual with a weapon fleeing from the cops, you kind of got the three pegs of the stool to use lethal force.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that redirect, because it also was all closed questions, which you're still not allowed to do, but whatever.
Well, he was saying that they didn't have the information at the time, so that the police, so that couldn't have been in their heads, that they couldn't have known that he was potentially armed and all this stuff prior. Therefore, it wasn't rational. That's what they're trying to set up.
Yes, but I guarantee you,
it's coming in other ways.
It's going to come in by other ways, and whether the defendant testifies or whatever, some other way they knew that there was a background with this group.
Oh yeah, plus history, plus yeah, there are reasons.
There was a history, and again, you do the objective, subjective, reasonable test. If they know that this is a guy that has a history of violence, a history of potentially having weapons, and behaves in this sort of way, that should be the end. But we'll continue.
When you are ready, please state your name for the record and spell it.
Officer Gregory Booza, Booza.
And what's your current occupation?
I am a police officer with the city of Modesto.
Were you employed by them on December 29th of 2020?
I was.
Okay. In what capacity were you employed by them?
I was a police officer assigned to the crime reduction team at the time.
What is that?
There was a proactive response unit dealing with any issues that came up with the city that needed more directed attention. We weren't patrol officers handling calls for service per se, unless we needed to step in and fill in.
And were you on duty specifically on December 29th, 2020 at approximately 11:33 a.m.?
I was.
And were you dispatched to a location at that time on that date?
Yes, I believe I proactively jumped on that call.
Okay. And what location was that?
I believe it was an address on Sandpoint Drive.
Was it 2005 Sandpoint Drive?
I'd have to check my report.
What city is that in?
City of Modesto.
What county is that in?
Stanislaus.
Now, why were you dispatched specifically to this location?
There was a call.
Misstates his testimony. I think he said he put himself on the call.
He jumped into the dispatch. It's sustained.
So you jumped into the dispatch. Why did you jump into the dispatch?
Other officers from our unit were responding to that call.
Now, when you were heading to that location, were you given any background as to what was occurring?
Yes.
Okay, and what was that? What information were you given?
We were advised that It was for a security check of Trevor Seaver. He had contacted his family stating he had bought a gun the night before and he was on his way to their house and he wouldn't like it when he got, or they wouldn't like it when he got there. After the initial dispatch came out, the Real-Time Crime Center at the Municipal Police Department advised that there had been an officer safety bulletin involving Trevor Seaver. Officer Lamantia requested that bulletin attempt to be resent out via department email. While I was driving to the call, I was able to pull that email up on my MDC to read the email.
So let's break that down a little bit. So the first piece of information that you received is about the 911 call.
Yes.
Okay. And that's specifically that Allison contacted MPD to report about this firearm and her brother, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that there was a second portion or second set of information regarding the safety bulletin. Tell us about that.
The Real-Time Crime Center was listening to the radio, I believe, and overheard the name, recognized it, and advised over dispatch that there was a officer safety bulletin related to that subject.
Were you personally able to review that safety bulletin?
Yes, I pulled it up on my computer.
Okay. And what do you remember about that safety bulletin?
I just quickly read it. I mainly just wanted to see a photo of the subject that we were going to be dispatched to. And then I quickly read some of it and then continued on.
And as you continued on, were you given any other updated information about this subject and his location?
There was, I believe, an update where he informed his sister, or sister was informing us, that he had gone to the house, the door was open, and he had just finished vandalizing it.
Did you get any information about where he was after that?
Yes, I believe the information came out that he would be in the intersection of Rosemont and Woodland.
Okay, and do you remember who provided that information?
Not specifically.
Now, were you given any other description of the possible subject? For example, what he was wearing?
Yes, I believe it was going to be a black hooded sweatshirt and gray sweatpants.
Now, while responding, were you given any, because you brought up Officer Lamantia, were you given any information about Officer Lamantia?
While en route to the call, I heard over the radio he was requesting emergency traffic and that shots had been fired.
So let's break that down. When you say emergency traffic.
That's another thing. This is minor, but I hear Lamantia and Lamantia. So just for everybody, if you hear both of those, they're equivalent. People just pronounce it differently.
What do you mean by that?
Requesting 1033 is what we call it, which is a code that you will clear the air, and it's only pertinent information now. And sometimes you'll hear tones coming across to remind everyone that we are currently in the status of emergency radio traffic, but basically it just clears up that channel specifically for that incident, so people aren't jumping on there for other reasons.
So according to you, Officer Lamantia requested that, correct?
From what I recall.
Okay. And you said that he also gave another piece of information over dispatch. What was that?
That shots had been fired.
And did he provide, he being Officer Lamantia, did he provide his location at that time?
From what I remember, he stated I knew he was about at the church because I was just focusing on our computer, which has AVL on it, which is positioning of people's vehicles. And being that I was in the same unit as him, I had his vehicle up on my MDC, so I knew where he'd be at. But I believe he stated he was at the church facing southbound.
So let's clear that up a little bit because there's two churches involved. Do you remember what church he was located at?
I do not.
Okay. Do you remember, would anything refresh your recollection?
I believe I think I recall the address.
What was the address?
I believe it was 2301 Woodland.
Did you say 2301?
Yeah, but that may also be incorrect, but that was just off recollection.
Was that the Brethren Church?
I do not recall any of the names of the churches involved. I knew the church in question because I had been there for community events prior. And so I knew for the most part what church would be located at that intersection.
But Officer Lamantia told you that he was at that address, correct?
I do not recall it because I was referring to his AVL and knowing that AVL was putting him at a church that I had previously been to, so I knew that.
So when you say AVL, that's the positioning system on the vehicles that MPD officers drive, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're looking at essentially the global positioning of this vehicle. And
this guy is not unspecified.
According to you at a church that you had been to prior.
Yes.
Now, what
really
did you do after receiving these pieces of information?
When I heard shots had been fired, at that point I activated my emergency lights and siren and responded to the scene in what we call code 3.
And did you arrive to the address that you previously stated, 2301 Woodland Avenue?
If that was the correct address, I was throwing that number out from my memory, but I arrived at that church.
Okay, and that's in the city of Modesto,
Yes,
County of Stanislaus?
yes.
Okay. Do you remember what entrance to the church you used?
I used the western parking lot entrance. It's on the north side of Woodland, but it's the furthest west entrance.
And when you entered that area, what did you see upon arrival?
I was looking for Officer Lamantia, and then as I drove further north, still looking for where his vehicle was based on the AVL, I could see a subject down by the bushes, and I could see Officer Lamantia taking cover behind a tree.
Okay, and what did you do in response to that?
At that point, I pulled forward, positioned my vehicle, got out, grabbed my rifle, and then took a position of cover up behind a tree.
At any point during this, did any other officers arrive?
Yes.
Okay. What happened?
Are you
Well, let me ask this.
You
How many
took
other
a
officers arrived?
position against a single.
Eventually the whole police department, but at that time it was essentially Officer Pena and Officer Portinga, I believe, were the next on scene, followed by Sergeant Tyler.
And when those 3 officers arrived, what happened?
At that point, we got a shield out to make an approach to take Trevor into custody.
What is a shield?
A shield, it's a ballistic shield that would provide ballistic protection if someone were to be firing rounds at us.
At that point, was anyone firing rounds at you?
At that point, no.
At that point, did you see any firearm?
I was not in a close enough.
Sorry, just to be clear, did you see a firearm on the subject?
The subject was laying down on the ground, moving around, so you couldn't see much from that. From where I was standing in my current position, I could
You're
not see much.
fucking Christ.
Now, you said you took position behind the tree, and then a shield was brought out. At some point, did you make contact with the subject?
Can I
Yes.
make a joke about
And
California
when
and
you
how they
did,
understand how firearms
what occurred?
work?
We went to handcuff him, and then we immediately began assessing his medical needs at that time. Officer Lamantia went to recover a trauma kit out of the patrol vehicles, and then we began providing medical attention.
At some point, did you obtain the information as to who this person was? The subject.
As far as like his name,
His name, correct?
that would have been after the fact.
Okay, but after the fact, did you find out what this person's name was?
Yes.
All right,
What was it?
I feel
Trevor Seaver.
extremely safe.
So as
With
you
somebody
are,
like this, it requires 3 people to back him up in a shield position when there's an active shooter. Great. Awesome. This is exactly the society I want to live in.
Well,
Thank you, California. I'm sorry. I can't let that go. The first person on the scene decided to take a hold in a defensive position behind a tree and call in 3 other people before he would approach an active shooter. Oh my God, why do you even have police, California?
well,
I'm sorry.
he doesn't
It
know
blew
what's
my
there.
mind.
I'll defend him. He doesn't know what's there.
No shit. Probably a gun. But you know what you have on your hip? A
Yeah.
gun.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
I didn't know you were such a
can't
cowboy,
let that
John.
go. It's such a stupid statement that is literally an open court. And this is why, honestly, everybody should have firearms, because people like this are the ones that are going to come and save you when you're already dead.
I have a different take. My whole take on this so far is, oh my God, this is witness number 2, and this witness is also horrible for the prosecution.
True as well.
or excuse me, as Officer Lamantia is getting the medical kit for Mr. Sieber, what are you doing?
I'm instructing Officer Portinga to get his clothing off of him, and then we're assessing him as far as where he was hit and what he needs.
Did you notice any type of blood on the subject or on Mr. Sieber?
Obvious blood on approach, yes. There was blood on the back of his underwear as we approached, but then we had him on his back. And at that point, there was very light blood around the bullet hole, but it was not something that was like seeping blood out.
When you say bullet hole, which one are you referring to?
I believe I located 2 on his chest.
And how did you locate those wounds?
When we had his sweatshirt cut off, it exposed his injuries, and we were assessing him for his injuries.
And you said you noticed two wounds to the chest.
2 obvious wounds to the chest, yes.
And what happened after that?
Once the trauma kit was there, I instructed everyone we needed the chest seals in order to put the chest seals onto those 2 bullet holes.
And what was Mr. Sieber doing during this?
He would talk for a period, then he would go silent, and then he would come back as if he was gasping for air, at which point I would be able to talk to him more. And I was mainly talking to him about how his breathing was for him.
Firing a shot across the bow very frequently.
At some point, do you get to examine the back part of his body?
Yes.
Okay, and at what point was that?
At one point, he had turned to his side during one of those moments where he came back and was gasping for air. He flipped over on his side, and just above his rear waistline, I was able to see another hole back there.
Did that hole appear to be bleeding?
No, it appeared to be about the same as the 2 on the front, where injuries in that area generally, it appeared the bleeding would be internally.
And after that occurred, who arrived next?
That was when additional officers had arrived, as well as EMS and fire.
And did you continue to render medical aid, or did fire and EMS take over?
Once they arrived, I briefed them on what we had already done, and they took over the medical intervention.
And were you given any tasks after that?
Yes.
And what were they?
Drove Officer Lamantia back to the police station.
Did you do that?
Yes.
Okay, at some point, did you go back to the scene?
Yes, I ended up going back to the scene.
And why'd you do that?
Because I was relieved at the police station, so I was going back in case they needed anything from me.
Just briefly, because we mentioned Officer Lamantia, do you see him here in court today?
I do.
Okay, where is he seated and what is he wearing?
He's seated over there, and he's wearing a blue shirt with like a yellow or gold tie.
And that,
Please identify the defendant.
and that's the person that you saw when you first arrived on scene?
Yes, I saw him there.
Was there any other officers there other than Officer Lamantia when you arrived on the scene?
Not in that immediate vicinity.
So you mentioned that there were a few wounds on the subject. Were you personally present when those injuries were created?
No.
Did you hear any shots as you approached?
No.
Nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Morning, Detective.
Morning.
How long have you been with the Modesto Police Department?
Just over 7 years.
You mentioned your assignment on December 29, 2020. Can you recite that again, please?
An officer assigned to the crime reduction team.
How long had you been in that assignment at that time?
Oh, in there. Oh, I can do some math real quick. It was about 1.5 years.
What was your assignment prior to that?
Patrol officer.
Do you have any prior law enforcement other than the 7 years with Modesto?
No.
You testified during direct examination that you, I wrote down here, proactively jumped on that call. Can you describe why you jumped on that call?
Being that we are in CRT, you're in a normal patrol uniform in a patrol vehicle. We have assignments assigned to us, but due to staffing levels, if guys are tied up on calls, if a call comes out that's needing immediate attention, we will jump on it to assist with calls as needed.
The information you received on that call prior to jumping on it, can you recite that to us?
It had come out over the radio that a security check for the caller's brother, where he's saying he's armed with a gun, and he's not going to like it when he gets to. They won't like it when he gets to the house.
And so you put yourself on the call after that information, and also you said that there were some staffing
California
issues.
applied for the
You're driving that way?
homicide.
Yes.
by
How do you know
firearm
which way to drive?
in the country?
The computer, and then just they get off the cross streets for the most part, and so you just start driving in that general direction until you can clarify on the
Sorry, I'm
computer
not gonna deal
where
with
those
your-
addresses are, because a call for service, when you get onto it, it will drop the location onto your map and give you the location of it on your map.
And you're using your right hand to like point to something. Can you tell us what in your car that you would be looking at?
Computer.
The computer. That's the MDC?
Yes.
And you testified that as you're driving in a direction toward this incident, that you overheard Officer Lamantia request a bulletin to be pushed out to the officers?
Yes.
How did you do that? I mean, how did you get that information? Was it on your MDC or was it on the radio?
So over the radio, the real-time crime center had mentioned it. So Officer Lamantia asked if they could send it out to everyone. I had my email already pulled up, so I just searched for the email and then reviewed it that way.
And when you say you reviewed it, can you tell us a little bit about it?
So officer safety bulletins are sent out in generally a PDF format, and they're generally 1 or 2 pages depending on the amount of information needed. And so when the person sends it out, it will be an attachment to that email. And so then you just click the attachment and it will pull the full bulletin up for you.
You recall the specifics of this specific bulletin?
I do not. I just remember his photos on it, and then it gives you a general physical description of the person, where their last known addresses are, and then just there's usually a paragraph about what the safety bulletin is about.
So this is titled Officer Safety Bulletin, correct?
Yes.
And the information is put out. Why is it put out by your department? What does it tell you as an officer?
That a certain person or subject is displaying something that would present a threat to law enforcement.
Did you, other than the safety bulletin, let me strike that, that's a compound. The safety bulletin gave you a photograph of the person, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever get a description of what he was wearing and how physically he was put together on the day of this incident?
A clothing description was given out, yes.
And how did you get that information?
I believe that was over the radio.
When you say radio, is that another officer talking to you, or is it dispatch?
I believe that was dispatch provided that update.
Do you know when you put yourself on this call, you're proactively responding to this call?
I think it was approximately 11:33.
You know what time you arrived at the church?
I do not.
Is that AM?
AM, yes.
When you arrived at the church, you stated that you saw Mr. Seaver on the ground, correct?
Yes.
And you saw Officer Lamantia taking cover behind a tree.
Yes.
And then you went to get your rifle.
Yes.
Why'd you get your rifle?
Because there was the threats of him having a firearm, shots had been fired, and so I was getting my rifle to prepare myself.
For your own safety?
Yes.
And you mentioned somebody arrived later and got a shield.
Yes.
Did I use that term right, shield, or is it something else?
Shield.
It is a shield, okay. And that wasn't you, right?
No.
Why would an officer use a shield?
To protect, it provides ballistic protection from rounds. So you do it when you're making approaches on threats, essentially.
So the person who was utilizing the shields was going to make an approach toward Mr. Seaver.
Yes, we were making an arrest team.
And then you said Officer Lamantia ran to his vehicle and got a trauma kit?
I don't know if it was specifically his vehicle, but he went to one of the vehicles that had arrived after me.
Thank you. Okay, so he went to one of the vehicles and got and I use the word trauma kit. Is that what you call it here?
They go by many different terms, from IFAC, trauma kit, first aid kit, but yes, trauma kit.
Okay. And you used an acronym, AVL. I think I know what that is. Can you tell us what AVL stands for?
I truly don't know what that stands for. I could take a guess at what I believe it stands for, but I've just always known it as AVL.
I don't want you to guess. Essentially, it's a GPS system in your vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who put out the officer safety bulletin on Mr. Seaver?
I do not.
When you receive an officer safety bulletin, as an officer to you, do you consider that information to be true?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, Judge.
Any redirect? Ms. Mendoza?
I just had some follow-up on the use of the shield. So in your experience, when is that typically used?
High-risk missions to include search warrants and making arrest teams on violent subjects.
Do you know why it was specifically used here?
There was mention of him having a firearm, and we approached him with the shield.
Okay, and how many of you approached with the shield?
In specific group with me, I believe it was four of us, and I believe Officer Lamantia joined us once we got up there.
Okay, so describe. I guess what I'm having trouble wrapping my head around is how big is this shield? Because there's several officers.
So everyone kind of stacks up to be able to provide the ballistic protection from it, but essentially the shield that we used that day, I believe it was a rectangle shape, and it was about this wide by probably, I don't know, like this tall. So
The witness has put his hands to the right, motioning a distance for the width of the shield to be about 2.5 feet, and the height of the shield to be about 4.5 feet.
probably 3 feet.
3 feet height.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so who's taking lead holding the shield?
I believe Officer Pena was the one holding the shield, and then from what I recall, it was on the left side. Officer Portinga, I believe, is on the right side, and then Sergeant Tyler was with us.
So it's essentially the first officer and then the next officer stacked behind the first officer?
Yes, so the first officer will be there. Like if this was the first officer, you'd have another officer here on the right side, one on the left side, and then you'll have sometimes a person in the back, or it may just be 3 of you approaching.
So the witness has put his left hand up to explain that the second one would be sort of staggered a little bit to the right of the lead person holding the shield, and this third person would be staggered to the left of that person, and then the fourth person would be directly behind the first person. He used his hands to motion that.
So is the shield pulled out whenever there's a possibility that
Great if they would actually
there's
provide us
danger
with
to a
those
police officer who's
photos.
arriving on scene?
That would be cool.
If there is actually a shield on scene, because shields are not in every vehicle, they're generally only in supervisor or special unit vehicles. So yes, when we have the opportunity and the availability of a shield, we will generally use it
Why?
on high risk.
Would you ever use it on a low risk?
What do they
situation?
cost? Like $60 a pop?
If something's deemed low risk, you wouldn't question whether or not you have a shield. If you're just approaching the average person, you're not going to obviously take a shield.
Is
But
that better?
based on the
I tried to
circumstances that
balance
we
it.
had, we would wait. We'd go with a shield.
Nothing further.
I don't know.
Can
I'm
we
just
cross?
operating with StreamYard's standard. So
You mentioned the
hopefully
use
it's
of the
better.
shield is essentially to keep officers from being shot, correct?
Yes.
So the shield was utilized here because the information that you had at this scene was that Mr. Seaver had a firearm.
Yes.
And I asked you questions earlier about the safety bulletin. I asked you if you knew who put that out. You said you didn't know. Do you know when that was put out?
In relation to the call, I don't remember how recent it was.
Can you describe for us generally, I know you don't remember everything, but what is typically on a safety bulletin other than the photograph that you said was on there?
It'll start off with the subject's name, personal identifying information, the height, weight, stuff like that, addresses associated with them, and then you'll generally have the synopsis of why this officer safety bulletin has been generated. So whatever it was, they'll describe it out in there.
And did you not read that synopsis?
No, I read parts of that synopsis. I was scanning it.
Okay. And did this particular safety bulletin, did it have any, do they have attachments, or is it just a sheet of paper, one sheet of paper? How does it
It's
work?
usually one sheet of paper in length.
Okay. Did this one have attachments?
I don't recall if there was attachments.
Okay. If there were, you didn't look at the attachments, right?
I don't recall looking at any.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't recall looking at any attachments.
Okay. But you did look at the safety bulletin, and do you recall what the synopsis
Bonjour.
was on Mr. Seaver?
Yes, he had been posting on social media Some of it was directed at the Modesto Police Department.
I'm sorry, what?
Some of what he was saying, the threatening messages were directed at the Modesto Police Department.
So the synopsis that you recall included some sort of information that said Mr. Seaver had threatened officers with the Modesto Police Department
Via social media, yes.
via social media. All right, thank you.
Ben.
An additional direct examination.
Yeah, that's the end of that. That would be the way that I would
Do you
have
remember
been
the
questioning.
exact wording on the
Are you
bulletin
kidding?
as to what these
That's
prior
easy.
threats were?
If I refer to my report out
There was an active threat
written
against
down in there.
myself
Yeah.
when engaging with this
Based
individual.
on what you're testifying today, do you remember what was on that bulletin?
the synopsis of the quotes they used from the social media would be that it was all I want from Christmas is a dead MPD officer or another dead MPD officer, and the only good cop is a dead cop, I believe.
And that was on the
That
bulletin.
sounds
and
pretty
you read
bad.
that.
Yes.
Yep.
Now going back
That
to.
doesn't sound like
the
a
shield,
guy that I want running around when
When you
I don't know
arrived,
if he has a weapon or
Where
not.
was Mr. Seaver?
Down on the ground next to the southwest building of the complex.
And you said you had information that there was a possible firearm, but when you arrived, did you see a firearm next to him?
From what I was directly looking at, no.
Did you see a firearm in his left hand?
Fatal police shooting.
No.
Did you see one in his right hand?
No.
Defendant far right.
And the decision to grab a shield was still made, though, correct?
Yes.
So just going back.
If they
to the
didn't
statements in
believe
the
That he
safety
might have had a
bulletin,
firearm on him. Why would they have
You
built
said
the phalanx
one of the
formation?
statements was something similar to a good cop is a dead
It
cop.
doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in that statement that you're given, I believe you're told that Mr. Seaver posted this on social media. Is that true?
What was the question? It was more.
Yeah, let me clear it up for you. Okay. So you have the first statement that's on the safety bullets, and what was that?
I don't remember the direct order. I was.
If they
recalling the
genuinely
statements
had
as I
no
remember them
belief that
since-
he was
Which
armed,
one do
why
you
would they
remember
have built the phalanx
I
formation?
believe all I want for Christmas is another dead MP officer.
Okay, and in that statement, does Mr. Seaver say at all that he's the one that's going to carry out some type of killing on officers?
From what I recall, I don't remember seeing that.
Okay, and you said that there was a second statement.
Correct.
Okay, what was the second statement that you remember?
A good cop is a dead cop.
Okay, and in that statement, is there anything about Mr. Seaver carrying this out?
Not that I recall.
Nothing further.
Additional cross-examination. Recross.
No.
Nevertheless, your department, somebody in your department thought it would be prudent to advise all the officers in the department of this threat via social media by Mr. Seaver, correct?
Objection, speculation.
Sustain.
Tell us about officer safety bulletins. How are they disseminated?
Generally created by our crime analysts after vetting the threats that are made to be credible, they will then distribute it out because they wouldn't distribute it out if they did not feel that it was presenting officer safety issues.
So the fact that they did, they felt whoever created this and pushed it out felt that it did create an officer safety issue.
Yes.
And Mr. Lamantia asked for that information to be pushed out again on his way to the scene, correct?
Yes.
The fact that you didn't see a firearm when you approached Mr. Seaver does not mean that there was no firearm present, correct?
Correct.
Just means that you didn't see one.
Correct.
And still for officer safety, because of the information you knew going to the scene is that Mr. Seaver had a firearm, you deployed the shield.
Correct.
And you got your rifle.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was
Any additional
actually a
questions?
really good recross.
Latest witness
Yep.
be excused.
It's very rare that you
As
see
officer
one.
responsibilities to testify
would-
have now concluded. This case is ongoing, so I'm going to ask you not to direct you not to discuss your testimony with anybody.
Okay, from the description, I was all prosecution. After the first two witnesses, yeah,
The whole truth and nothing
I see the defense real clearly.
You have a seat, please.
Your Honor,
That
before we get started, I have
recross,
several exhibits. that
Three
need to be
easy
watched.
questions, very
See
straightforward.
that now?
I thought were very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And just for the record, I'm showing opposing counsel, all of the exhibits I'm going to have
Again,
marked.
we're talking subjective and objective
Should have copies
fear
of
of
all of these already.
grievous bodily harm or death to
Okay, Detective
officers or
can
the
you
public.
please state your name and spell it for the record?
We're getting pretty close there.
MARIOLOPEZ.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm employed as a police officer with the city of Modesto, currently assigned as a detective.
Okay, and back in December 29th of 2020, were you employed by the Modesto Police Department?
I was.
Okay, and
It's
were
a
you
prelim.
detective
There'll be no
back
jury.
in December 29th of 2020?
I was.
Now, were you on duty on December 29th, 2020 at approximately 11:46 a.m.?
I was.
Okay, were you dispatched to an address around that time?
No, I tried to enable
Yes.
Okay, what address was that?
That was, I believe it was 2501.
it, but I can't
I'd have
turn
to
it
look
on
back at
now.
The exact Woodland, sorry.
Would that be, did you say 25 or 23?
2301. I apologize. 2301 Woodland.
And is that in the city of Modesto,
It is.
county of Stanislaus?
Yes, sir.
And why were you dispatched to that address?
An officer had just been involved in a shooting. The radio traffic had come over the radio,
And
and
remember, this is all the
units had just been
prosecution
starting to
witness.
head that way, so I
and
started
they're
that way as
not-
well.
Were you advised as to which officer was involved in
They're
that shooting?
making the shooting
Not at that
seem
moment, no.
reasonable.
Okay, at some point were you advised as to
I
which
could give you a
officer was
link, but
involved
they
in that
pulled it.
shooting?
Later on, yes,
Okay, later on December 29th of 2020.
correct.
And which officer was that?
Officer Lamantia.
And do you see him here today in court?
I do.
Okay, where is he sitting and what is he wearing?
He's sitting on the other side of the table and wearing a black suit and blue shirt.
Identify the defendant.
Now, you said you gave us a reason why you were dispatched to that address. What happened when you arrived to that address?
By the time I got there, there had been a number of units already arrived on scene. They had already started setting up a crime scene and basically using like caution tape to measure off the area and stuff like that.
Okay, and was there any type of briefing that occurred at that point?
There was a briefing to start going over the crime scene, and that happened shortly after I arrived.
And what occurred at that briefing?
At the briefing, there was information provided from the officers that were first on scene, including I believe there was a supervisor as well, who were first on scene, just giving the details of the call that the officers responded to and a brief overview of what they knew at that time, mainly consisting of how many rounds were fired by the involved officer in which direction.
Okay, and were you given a specific task after the completion of that briefing?
I was.
And what was your task?
My task was to be the crime scene manager for that incident.
And what does that mean?
The crime scene manager is, when it comes to our investigations, you have an investigative portion of it and you have the crime scene portion of it. As the crime scene manager, my job is to go through and identify the scene, what is involved in the scene, items of evidence that should be documented in the scene, and then the collection of evidence.
Okay, and at some point, do you do some type of walkthrough the scene to do all of that?
I do.
And did you do a walkthrough on December 29th of 2020
I did.
of that scene located at 2301 Woodland Avenue?
I did.
Okay, describe the walkthrough that you did.
So for the walkthrough, we started at the very far east end of the church, which is closer to Dan West, I believe is the name of the court that's right there. And we started walking westbound from there. The first thing that we encountered was the involved officer's patrol car.
Naughty chat.
Just past that was a small alcove, which is the corner of the building.
Let me slow you down just a little bit. You mentioned the vehicle. So I'm showing opposing counsel what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 9. Okay, I approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
Now I'm showing Detective Lopez what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 9. Detective Lopez, please look at that. What is that?
It is a Modesto Police Department patrol car, specifically car number 49.
And
All
you
right.
mentioned that when you did a walkthrough, you saw a patrol vehicle there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that the patrol vehicle they saw during the walkthrough?
That is.
Okay. And whose patrol vehicle is that
That
on
was
that day?
on that day. That was Officer Lamantia's patrol vehicle.
And is this the fair and accurate representation of where the vehicle was last?
That is.
Your Honor, people like to move exhibit number 9, people's exhibit number 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
What is the relevance of
So,
any of
going
this?
Back to the vehicle, what did you notice about the vehicle?
Specifically that the door was left open, the driver's side door, and that the vehicle was still running.
I didn't hear the last part. The door was open and what
The
happened?
vehicle was still running.
The vehicle's running.
Where's this vehicle parked?
It was parked on the northeast side of the church facing eastbound.
Okay, and what's that near? Is it near a building? Is it in the parking lot?
It's near the church, so it's a small roadway that connects from Woodland Avenue from one parking lot and all the way around to Dan West, which also has a secondary parking lot.
Okay, and after seeing the parked vehicle, what did you encounter next during your walkthrough?
During the walkthrough, the next thing that we encountered just past that was a small alcove. It's kind of like a covered area with a small concrete patio almost area with some steps that lead up, a couple of steps.
And this is probably not a good time, but it's the noon hour, so we're going to take our lunch recess.
Was
So
in the
this is the
brief,
difference, though.
when Officer Lamantia first contacted the subject.
Oh, you just skipped through it.
What's
Right.
that?
No, you just skipped through the lunch break. What I was going to say is this is the difference between an actually prepared witness as opposed to the one that we had before.
Yeah, yeah. He's a lot smoother. He was ready to testify.
Yeah.
was
That's a solid
just
point.
past his vehicle in the alcove area right there. So since there was items right there, we documented him as this is possibly where the first sighting was at.
Okay, and now you use the word subject, but we're talking about Mr. Seaver, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So is this a fair and accurate description of the area that you walked through on December 29th of 2020?
It is.
Under, may I have People's Exhibit 11 moved into evidence?
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
We're going to move on to People's Exhibit 12. What is this a photo of?
This is the driveway that connects the west parking lot to the east parking lot on the north side or the back side of the church.
Now, can you see any portion of the alcove that you talked about before in this photo?
Not the alcove, but the wall.
And is that the wall that's connected to that area?
Correct.
Okay, so this is another, I guess, a step forward around the corner.
That is true.
Now, in the photo, I believe there are some evidence placards here, correct?
There is.
What numbers are those?
Can I pick it up to look at it?
Yeah, go.
I see 5, 6, 7, and the light's obstructing the last one, and I can't see the number.
So and I'm getting a little bit ahead. After you walk through the alcove, what was the next thing that
That
you
sounds good. I'm not gonna lie.
After the alcove, in making that pan right there, we then walked in a southwest direction towards another building on the property.
And what, if anything, did you notice?
There were midway through the grass area, so right off of this picture, if you go in a southwest direction, there were some more shell casings in the grass, along with some keys, I believe. And then, go ahead.
I got a little ahead of you. You mentioned that there's evidence placards in that photo. What are they near?
Those evidence placards are over shell casings.
Okay, how many shell casings were located at that area?
There were 4 shell casings at that one.
Okay, and at some point, did you determine, you said that there was also 3 shell casings located a little further down, but at some point, did you determine who fired those rounds there?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
an answer?
It was later determined that they were fired from the involved officer, Officer Lamantia.
Okay. And there's 4 there, correct?
That's on this picture, yes.
Based on your investigation, were you able to determine if those were fired before or after the 3 shell casings that you found later?
I'm pausing because I don't know. I guess I would be making guesses at that point, but
And I don't want you to make
yeah,
guesses. Okay. But you find these 4 in this photo, correct?
correct.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate representation of where you found those shell casings on that day?
Yes.
Moving People's Exhibit 12 into evidence?
Hey, look at it.
Any objection?
I just need to see it again. No objection to the exhibit being received.
It's received in evidence.
So, sorry, getting a little ahead of me. After walking through that area where you found the 4 shell casings, where'd you go next?
We continued walking in a southwest direction across the grass. And that's where we encountered 3 spent shell casings, some keys. And those were next to some very small trees that were in the middle of the grass.
I have a clarifying question. You had asked a question about 4 shell casings, and your answer is 3 shell casings. Were there just a total of 3 or a total of 4?
4 at the first place right there on the concrete,
Okay.
3 at the second location.
Got it.
Which was on the
So it's
grass.
a different area. Got it. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
So I'm showing Defense Counsel People's Exhibit 13. Or may I approach with this?
You may.
So you just mentioned walking into a grassy area and finding 3 more shell casings. You look at People's Exhibit 13, what does that depict?
It's the grass area that was between the initial corner of the alcove and the far west building. So it's the middle point.
In that photo, do you see the evidence placards?
I do.
Okay. What numbers are they?
9, 10, and 11.
So am I.
What are they supposed to be attached to?
They appear to have shell casings in front of them, so those would be the shell casings.
So these are the 3 that you found next.
Correct.
Okay, so as of now, there's 4 that you found initially, correct?
Yes.
And then 3 after that.
Yes.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of where you located the set of 3 shell casings?
Yes.
The people moved exhibit number 13 into evidence?
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
So continuing with your walkthrough, what did you do next?
After those shell casings were discovered, we then moved towards the wall that faces north on that very west hand building.
And what did you see there?
There, I found some clothing that had been cut away, and very few other little items. I want to say it was like some medical bags from a police vehicle and 4 impact sites to the wall that was right there.
I'm showing Defense Counsel People's Exhibit 3.
Police shooting, self-defense.
16 and 10.
Who knows what's happening in Tampa? Who knows?
Thank you.
Mayor, may I approach with these exhibits?
You may.
Well, let's start off with people's exhibit. What is this?
It's a photo of the wall and a placard with some clothes and a hat on the ground.
And you said that there were some clothes that were cut away. Did you determine who those clothes belonged to?
I later determined that those were the clothes that Mr. Siebert had on.
And you mentioned
I busted out the White Claw
after
the big Michigan win.
I believe is what you said.
I did.
Correct.
Do you see those in the photo?
I do.
Okay, where are they?
The wall in the photo has a line directly between it and the
Damn
stucco,
straight.
and all four are below the line spread out.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of that area of the walkthrough that you did on December 29th, 2020?
It is.
Moving People's Exhibit number 3 into evidence?
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
So just a follow-up question to Exhibit 3. Why did you note the 4 impact sites? Why was that important to you?
Well, anytime a firearm is fired, I need to know where the rounds went. So knowing and identifying the wall where the rounds hit is just important to show, hey, this is where the rounds landed.
So as of right now, you found a set of 4 shell casings and a set of 3 shell casings, right?
Correct.
Is that really what we're arguing
At this
over?
point, you have found 4 impact sites for the bullets.
Big in.
So you accounted for 4 out of the 7 shots.
I did.
Now moving on to exhibit number 10. What is this?
The same area of the last photo, just panned more to the
Stanislaus.
west. And
Stanislaus
it
County.
has the medical bags that look like they're from the police cars, along with some additional clothing.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of
What is it with you roping me into these
Notice.
ridiculous cases?
People's Exhibit number 10 into evidence?
Any objection?
No.
It's received.
That's what I do.
Witness
Apparently.
exhibit number 16. What's in that
I'm
photo?
gonna have my dinner
In
regardless.
this photo, there is looks like a white shirt and a black
Oh,
sweater hoodie.
everyone's hungry in the chat.
And then I can't tell you what is under number 15 right there. Unless
I
I
haven't
turn
eaten
it.
today.
Oh, you can pick it up.
They've gotten me hungry too.
Next to
Yeah,
the
it's
number
all right.
18.
I'm poor. I do ramen noodles and a
I can't
peanut butter
identify from the
sandwich.
picture. I don't-
Is this just another angle
What happens with a young lawyer?
similar to exhibit 3 and 10? Just a close up.
From the, yes, that is, yes.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of the area that you did a walkthrough on that day?
Yes.
Interesting.
Moving People's Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It's received.
After completing this portion of your walkthrough, what did you do next?
After the walkthrough was completed, the ID tech, Nikolai, arrived, and there was a second walkthrough of the scene, and that time is just to identify what I'm looking for the ID tech to start as far as the photographing and videoing of the scene for the documentation portions.
Okay. That sounds palatable.
Now, going back to the alcove, were you able to determine from the photo that I showed you where you can see the corner of the alcove to where the shell casings, the set of 4, what was the distance there? Let me ask a foundational question. Did you do any measurements while you were out on scene?
No, I did not do any measurements that initial.
Oh my
time
God,
at
you literally
the
lost your
location.
foundational
Any kind of
question.
measurements that I did make were via like Google Maps, using a measuring tool on Google Maps.
Okay, so explain to me how you did that.
Bring up an overview on Google Maps of the location, and you're able to drop a pin.
That's
from
how you
one corner,
conduct an
which I roughly
investigation, is
estimate
through
is
Google Maps.
the corner just
in terms
outside
of
of that
shell
alcove,
casings.
down towards the wall where the impact sites were at and the clothing was located.
So
This is
did you take any
California,
measurements
right? This
from
is the
that
third
corner
world.
of the wall to where the first set of shell casings were found?
I did not personally. Now, with that said, CSO Nikolai later ran the Faro from the vehicle to the impact site, and that does have measurements in there, but I have not seen those measurements.
Have you been out to the site?
I have.
Okay, you said you did Google Maps.
I did.
Okay, and you were able to
There's
figure
no
out where
mustard
things
in
were
my
placed
beard.
by looking at Google Maps, correct?
There's no
In
mustard
a
in my
rough
beard.
estimate, yes.
Are you able to give us a rough estimate of the wall to the first set of shell casings?
Somewhere between 10 and 15 feet, I'd imagine, from the wall.
Okay, and you said that you did measurement from the first shell casings out towards where the clothing were found.
Correct.
Okay. What's the distance?
I would have to go back to my notes in my report, but I don't recall it off the top of my head.
Okay, would looking at your report help you?
Yes,
Do you have your report in front of you?
I do.
Look at your report.
From just outside the corner of the alcove to the wall shows to be roughly 172 feet.
And you said that from that corner to the shell casings was about 10 to 15 feet.
Correct.
Okay, and are the shell casings equivalent in distance as the wall to where the clothing is found? And if that's a confusing question, let me know.
Yeah.
It's confusing
Oh,
to me.
oh, wait. When
So-
I do the Indiana
You have
case,
the corner of the wall that's
we're going
attached
to talk
to the
about
alcove, correct?
real small
Yes.
And you
towns.
said from there to where the clothing is found is about 172 feet.
Correct.
Okay, and you said that the shell casings, the first set of shell casings are
That's right,
about
it's
10 to
competitive,
15
not
feet
even.
away from that corner.
Correct.
Okay, so then, based on your measurements, did you determine how far the shell casings were to where the clothing is found?
I did not measure that, but I would imagine it would be, if I had to, again, take a guesstimate, it would be roughly around that 170 feet.
Now, at some point, did you take a measurement from the second set of shell casings to where the clothing is found?
I did not in this initial, no.
Now, you're saying initial, so was there a secondary walkthrough that you did at some point?
There was a secondary walkthrough that was done, I want to say like a week later.
But you didn't take any
During-
forensic
During that
evidence
walkthrough,
at
did
all.
you take any measurements?
Great.
CSO Nikolai used a roller tape, which is basically like a stick with like a roll on it that measures distance. And they used that, but I don't recall the measurements off the top of my head.
Yes, Angela.
Let me
The
ask you
Delphi
this.
case.
Were with the second set
I'm
of shell
following up
casings
with that
closer or
after
further
this
away than the
step.
first set?
The second set of shell casings were closer to the clothing.
Chat sent me to the fridge there.
Since you brought up this, the second walkthrough that you did, was that on January 5th of 2021?
Wouldn't it be nice if they
Not
actually
sure the
took
date.
measurements during
You
the
said it was
first
about a week
walkthrough
afterwards.
of the crime
Correct.
scene?
So January 5th,
That'd
about a
be
week
kinda
after December 29th of 2020.
That is true.
Okay, were you given any additional information regarding
It's-
the?
It's been my
unaccounted
experience,
for bullets?
Vic.
At that point, the one round that we hadn't accounted for when I was looking through photos on evidence.com before submitting my report, I saw that there were autopsy photos that had been uploaded. In that, the 2 bullet wounds that I had accounted for on Mr. Seaver was to the front of the body.
Smoked salmon.
In the autopsy photos, there was an additional
here I could grab immediately.
round that was found in the back. So that was the additional round that I assumed that I couldn't account for.
So that would total 7.
Correct.
And those are the 7 shell
I'm sorry,
casings.
the
Would you
additional
believe those are the
rounds
7
I
shell
assumed
casings
I
that
couldn't
you found on the
account
scene?
for. As a
Yes.
lawyer, does that not make you cringe? Like
Yeah.
you couldn't believe?
One moment, Your Honor.
Like, let me ask you honestly. That was the round that I assumed I could not account for, and that is my witness. I'm like, all right, well,
Yeah.
prove nothing.
Interesting.
So, Detective Lopez, do you have any specialized training in firearms?
I do.
Can you tell us about that specialized training?
Oh, this is a big hunk of smoked salmon.
I am one of the department's
Not the
range
thin slice
masters.
stuff.
What
So
does that mean?
I am a firearms instructor for the police department.
Yeah, this is the
As a
waste of
firearms
time.
instructor, based on your title and your experience, what do you know about the firearm used in this case?
Lack of foundation.
Do you know what firearm was
I'm going to
used in-
sustain the objection.
Do you know what firearm?
They say
officer
title
wanted
and
to
experience
have
as
that
opposed to training
I
and
did receive the
experience.
photos of the firearm and
What
the
the
serial number, so
hell?
yes, I do know what it is.
Okay, what type of firearm is it?
It was a SIG 320.
Is that a automatic, semi-automatic firearm?
It's a semi-automatic pistol.
Okay.
Did
So-
this lawyer come out of
Based
kindergarten?
on your training and experience, when
Now he got
a
it.
round is fired from that firearm, does it eject to the left or to the right?
The ejection ports on the firearm are on the right side of the gun.
So if someone's holding it with their right hand, it's going to eject to the right.
Yes.
Okay. So if 4 rounds are fired near that
What's up, brother?
location that you saw in the photo,
Hey, how's it going?
where would that person be standing? Left
I came
or
here to
right of the
learn,
firearm?
by the way.
Lack of foundation.
I
And
got a
it's also
pencil,
big. I'm not sure
pen,
which photo
ready to take notes.
sustain.
If I can have the photos.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, yo, John,
Good to see you, brother.
to be here.
This has been painful.
Oh, yeah?
That's how we roll.
Showing opposing counsel exhibit 12.
I know all of that awkward and painful.
So looking at exhibit 12,
I think the prosecution
Well,
might have
that-
received their law degree from
this
a
is where
court.
the 4 shell casings were found.
Correct.
Okay, so
People are watching, finding the body cam footage.
Firearm use.
And I'm getting conflicting views in the chat.
Oh, yeah? What do we, murder case or
The
what do we
person
got?
firing the weapon would have been standing to the left of these placards.
Objection, speculation, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Now, looking at, I'll show post exhibit 13. This is a photo of the 3 rounds that you, or excuse me, 3 shell casings that you found.
What exhibit was it again?
That's right, this is in California.
13?
13.
Yep.
Is that the 3 shell casings that you found?
Correct.
Okay. And same question. If you found them there, assuming the firearms
Yeah, I can try.
properly, where would the person be standing? To the left, to the right?
Objection, lack of foundation, also speculation.
I'm going to sustain it. It may depend on which angle he's firing the shot. And this witness doesn't know that. Which direction the shot's being fired.
Because he doesn't know it. He said he didn't know twice.
Going back
Oh
to
my
the
God.
walkthrough.
This is the prosecution's witness. How do they walk into that buzzsaw?
Going back to the walkthrough.
All right.
After finding the impact sites, and I believe you mentioned the wounds, what else did you do?
After the walkthroughs,
Oh, thanks. Okay, what?
we have to kind of wait a process a little bit for the ID tech to finish the videoing, the photographing, and then the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh is, I can't speak intelligently on it, but it's a machine that gets put up in one place. It does basically like a circle scan. It makes like a 3D image of it. It gives measurements and gives you the ability to kind of walk through whatever it scans. So after it goes through all of those steps, we're then okay to go ahead and start collecting the evidence.
Now, how do you spell that? It's F-A-R-O?
Yes,
So did you have any part in that?
I do not.
You did not?
No.
So you said after that you're allowed to collect the evidence. Did you collect the evidence in this case?
I did assist with collecting a portion of the evidence.
Yeah.
Detective, now Sergeant Weber, was directed with CSO Nikolai to go ahead and start collecting the evidence and packaging it.
1, 2, 3, not it.
Sorry, Your Honor. So going back to your training with firearms, in general, which way do semi-automatic firearms eject shell casings?
Objection, speculation, lack of foundation. It's overly broad.
I'm going to sustain it on overly broad. I don't know whether there is a general way.
Okay, so specific to this firearm, do you know which way it typically ejects the shell casing? To the firearm in question here that Officer Lamantia had on him.
I can't tell you an exact. What I can tell you is the ejection port is on the right side of the gun, and when the gun cycles, that's which way the spent shell casing should go. Now, the direction from that, I can't tell you.
Okay.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. I get exhibit 12. Detective, how long have you been a range master?
Since 2018, about May of 2018.
And you identified Officer Lamantia's firearm as a 6-hour?
I believe I don't know if it's a 6-hour, the 320.
Oh, okay, 320. Have you ever fired that weapon?
I have.
And you said the ejection port is
Do
on
you
the
literally
right,
know anything?
right?
The right side of the pistol, yes.
And you were asked a question about if a person's holding it with the right hand, would the shell casing eject to the right? Person's holding with their left hand, the shell casing is still going to go to the right, correct?
Correct.
Because the ejection port's on the right.
Correct.
And as far as ejection casing patterns, have you ever done an ejection casing pattern study to determine what propensity of some firearm will have to throw the shell casings off to the right or
What was that?
I am not.
And
$5 says the answer is no.
well, may I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Exhibit 12, I think you identified some evidence stands on the pavement, correct?
Correct.
Those were where you found the shell casings?
Correct.
Shell casings are metal? Yes?
In some portion, yes.
Okay, were these metal?
Yes, these ones are.
So when a shell casing is extracted from a firearm, the location of that shell casing is going to depend on a number of things. The load of
I
the
know my
bullet,
ramen.
correct?
Correct.
Laughing at this idiot.
Any wind in the area?
You too, Maria.
Yes.
The position of the gun was held. If it's a little sideways or down or up, it's going to change the pattern of the extraction, correct?
Yes,
And if the shell casing hit that hard surface, it's going to bounce somewhere, right?
that happens, yes.
You testified that you determined that the gun that fired the bullets related to this event belonged to Officer Lamantia. I think that was your testimony earlier. You didn't do your own investigation. You just learned that through your investigation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the question at issue is not if he shot the guy, it's whether he shot the guy justifiably or not. Stop with that. It's a waste of time.
That's all I have.
Can you redirect?
No.
May this witness be excused?
Good.
All right, Detective Lopez, your responsibilities to testify have now concluded. You may go about your day. Because this is an ongoing matter, do not discuss your testimony with anybody, with the exception of the attorneys that are sitting before you. Have a good day.
Ben, I don't know if you've been watching it all, but this has been one of the dumbest.
No, I don't have the
Your
full
next witness.
context really of what's going on.
Derek Tyler.
The guy shot a dude running away. He was a cop. The other guy was a white dude, which shouldn't matter, but unfortunately it tends to. In any event, the 911 came in that he was armed and dangerous. He rolled up on the guy, waited for
Sir, if you could
backup.
stand
They
right out
put
there,
together
there's
a
my
fell
purse, she'll swear you in.
information. The dude started to bolt.
Do you solemnly
They
state that the
fired.
evidence you shall give in this matter shall be the
That's
truth,
the
whole
basic
truth, and
fact of
nothing
the
but
case. And
Thank
Mike,
you.
you can correct
And have
me
a
if
seat
I'm
here,
wrong,
please.
but I believe that's the basic fact of the case.
It's about right.
So
You may proceed. Not sure who's doing it.
No, this isn't live.
Last name for the record, please.
James Derek Tyler, Tyler.
And you're recently retired?
Yes.
And
No,
what are you, I'm sorry?
I retired in May. Yes.
And retired from what organization?
Modesto Police Department,
And how long had you been with the Modesto Police Department before May of this year?
approximately 25 years.
And what was your position at the time of retirement?
Patrol sergeant
And how long had you been assigned as a patrol sergeant?
Since 2000. Well, I've been a sergeant since 2006, and I was patrol sergeant probably 10 years out
I'm
of
at home,
16.
Tammy.
And were you on duty on December 29th of 2020?
Yes.
And what was your assignment at that time?
I was assigned to patrol day shift.
And did you come to be dispatched to 2005 Sandpoint?
Yes.
And how did that occur?
I heard dispatch call of an incident, and dispatch was looking for officers to respond to the location.
Okay, so you weren't specifically dispatched, but you reported into the call?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the purpose of reporting into the call? What were you asked to do, or what did you accept to do?
What was that? Excuse me. The nature of the call required an immediate response based off the information we were getting.
And what information was that?
That a family member had made comments about arming themselves with the firearm and going to the residence, sounding like the person was going to cause harm to the family.
So when you checked into the call, where were you going to go?
Where was I going to go?
Yeah.
Well, initially I was in the north side of Modesto, so I was just going to respond to the area. And as I was responding, things started to develop. More information started to come in.
Okay. What information was that came in?
Well, twofold. Information was coming in, and I was trying to coordinate a response.
Okay, let's start with the information that was coming in.
The name of the person. I asked for a description of the person and information that he may have been walking from a nearby park to the residence.
Okay, and at some point, you then mark the resources. lack of a better term?
Yes, having the appearance that the person was on foot and walked to the residence, asked for the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department's airship to see if it was available. So hoping that they could spot him prior to getting to the residence.
Okay, and what was the response
Please,
to
for the love of God,
They weren't logged
lean
on
back a
during
little
the
bit from the
air-
that? Does
microphone.
that mean not logged on?
They weren't on a computer that's assigned to the helicopter or plane, depending on which vehicle they were in that day.
Meaning they weren't available?
Yes.
Begin. With friends like you, who needs trolls?
So initially you were en route to the area of 2005 Sandpoint,
Yes.
and then did that change?
As I got into the area, information had come in that the person was no longer at the residence and was leaving.
Cat in Virginia, that could be the case, but that's not the testimony that I heard
Did
stated
that change
today.
where you were going?
So I'm going to go
Changed
with
my
what was
approach
put in front of
to the
open
call.
court.
About the time that came out, I was probably mid-walk between Blue Gum and Rosemore, I believe it is.
On what street?
It's North-South Street. I can't remember the name of the street. Actually,
If that were the case,
Should have been
do you
Blue
not
Gum and
think that
Woodland
that's
had to be in between,
exactly
so it's
what the
probably
prosecution
on
was led
Rosemore.
with from
Yes.
day,
Now, and let me
from
ask you,
moment
you've
one?
had in the not too distant past.
If he shot before calling for backup,
Has had that some
you don't think
impact
that
on
would have been the
concern you
most
today that you brought
highlighted
it up?
clip
Yeah, I
of
suffered
anything
from
they
brain
possibly
fog.
could have said?
So you do have
So
every
the fact
right
that they
to do that.
didn't
Yes.
makes me
And
think
if
it's
you need to,
probably
you
not
understand,
true.
you can ask us for a moment to refresh your recollection.
Yes.
Okay. So you're mid-block between Blue Gum and and Woodland on
Yes.
Rosemore.
I don't know, Mike,
Heading
you
in
were
the direction
listening
of
too.
2005.
Did I just miss it?
Sandpoint general area.
Correct.
And asking you to take a look at what's been marked. We'll just stick with Exhibit 1. You recognize this area? I know it's hard to see, so there are streets. So there's Sandpoint, there's Rosemore, and there's Woodland, along with a Church of the Brethren and a Victory Life Center.
Yes.
You recognize that area?
That's not what I heard.
So you
Mike,
are-
you were watching with me.
When the
Did you hear
situation
that?
changed, You were,
No.
you're indicating you were up here.
So
on
I
Rosemore,
don't know.
someplace
Maybe we
between
both
Woodland and
missed it.
Blue Gum, which is also-
Yeah, I was further north.
No, I think we got the testimony right.
I mean, if we both
And
missed
the
it,
situation that changed
that
was
would be a
it's
really
reported that
damn
Trevor
bad
Seaver was no
thing
longer at the
to
house at
screw
Sandpoint.
up on and
Correct.
not
Okay,
emphasize.
and with that change, what did that cause as far as cause you to do?
Well, prior to getting to that location, I was going to stage and have units meet with me and triangulate a perimeter.
Okay, now, when you say prior to that location, do you mean prior to finding out he was no longer at Sandpoint?
Well, so we have
As
two
I'm
options.
driving in.
One, we have an absolutely
it's all
god
happening at the
awful
same time.
fucking
So as I'm
prosecutor,
coming down the street,
which is possible.
my plans are to
Or
pick an area to stage.
the statements
and start setting
that
up
we're
perimeter
hearing are
points
not
of where
necessarily
he was last
driving
seen
with
in the last direction of
the
travel.
evidence available.
Okay, so it's after he's
Both
left
of those
2005
two
Sandpoint.
things
Yes.
can be
Okay.
true.
So you're
and
now
what
coming down
people say can
Rosemore,
be true
he's
as
left
well.
Sandpoint.
Otherwise, they're not. That's the
What
logic
did you do
path.
next?
You can build a tree.
The next thing that happened was officer got on the radio and asked for emergency traffic.
Well, prior to that, did you go 1097?
Yes.
Okay, and where did you indicate 1097?
I probably called out at Rosemore in Woodland, but I generally doesn't mean I was at that spot. As I'm traveling down the street, I'm going to say I'm 97, headed to that spot.
As you're coming down Rosemore?
Yes, correct.
Would refresh your recollection to review your report to see if that's where you called out 1097?
Sure.
Oh, based on his report is.
Good question, and I don't know.
336. Thank you.
I am absolutely willing to accept that the prosecutor just changed
I also particularly see anything in my report that says
That might be.
it's not my call history, so it's a report that doesn't necessarily say when I went 97.
What does it mean to go 1097?
I'm on scene or in the area.
I'm asking you to look at the first 7 entries to read to yourself. This is solely for purposes to see that refresh.
Can you describe what he's reading?
He's reviewing a transcript of the PVRS. He's reviewing the very first 6 or 7 entries of the transcript of Officer Lamantia.
I did.
PVRS.
All right.
But I didn't get one.
Just for refresh recollection, if it does.
I need to cook. I'm not doing that.
Don't you have any leftovers?
I might just have to Uber Eats. A little small cheval. Because that stuff is all kinds of good.
So now in relation to the emergency traffic call, did you call in 1097 at Rosemore and Woodland prior or after that?
Can you repeat that?
You indicated to us that there was an emergency traffic. That's a 1033.
Correct.
You had called in 1097 at Rosemore and Woodland.
Mhm.
The question is that your call in happened before the 1033 emergency traffic or after?
It was probably as I was approaching that location.
As you were. But in
I sure do,
relation to
Greg C.
The call out of 1033.
That was as I was driving towards that intersection.
So does this refresh your recollection as to which came first?
I heard the emergency traffic prior to getting to that location.
You did?
Yes.
No, prior to the call, the 1097 call.
Yes.
Okay. I ask you to take a look at this and indicate which occurred first, is what I'm asking. The 1033 or you're calling out 1097?
So based off the records, it's saying that I called 97 prior to his 1033.
People need to remember, though, this is a
Well,
prelim.
emergency.
The burden of proof for the prosecution is pretty low to get it bound over. So it's not nearly what you need. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt, the standard.
Now, did
There,
you
you
deal
learned
at all with
something.
We opened with that very discussion.
trip to
Yeah,
Woodland
so-
and Rosemore?
I mean, I'll just get
Yeah, during my response to the call, I had requested that for any unmarked units to if they could respond. To
I'm not
assist.
sure there'll be a trial.
And was anybody working on that?
Yes, I'd asked for it over radio, and then I also called my watch parent, asking him to see if he could get some people out.
And was
You
that?
think the state's going to
That
lose
was
on the prelim?
Lieutenant Adams at the time.
So you had people working on getting undercover cars there.
Correct.
Either a prelim or a deal on a much lesser charge.
You requested air support.
Yeah.
well, that could.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Is there standard slight or marginal
Tell us
evidence?
Your intention in calling in
And
the air support.
that's what it is here in
and
Nevada.
For unmarked
And we're
cars.
pretty much East California.
My intention was to make for a safe response for the officers and the citizens and the individuals that were involved in this incident. My goal was to have someone, maybe unmarked, because he'd also come out that he had made threats toward law enforcement. And my fear was that a black and white, if this person was actually armed, that might give him a target and a focus versus an unmarked vehicle he may not have paid attention to. And if we can get eyes on this person, that we could have a peaceful resolution to the event.
Did you ask for any other support from other agencies?
Florida would be a
Ask
little
for
tougher.
CHP, their support, see if they're up in the area.
Because they have an extra layer. So he might not go to jail, but probably lose his career. Which still is kind of a punishment in and of itself.
So when you say that you are trying to maximize safety to the public, the officers, the individuals all involved in this instance, what would staging do to assist that?
After he'd left the residence, I wanted to set a perimeter to triangulate so that we could have a better search. Put him into a box, more or less, so that we have an area to search that he couldn't get out of if we need to find it.
So would that tend to slow down everybody's conduct as far as what they're doing?
Absolutely.
Was that part of your intent, or is it just an intent? That's just something that happens.
Richard Anderson, you're right. Really, really
prior
stupid
to
people with way too much money spend a lot of money to live in
You started
California.
calling for assistance
That is
after he
true.
slept.
Yes.
Yes, that was.
My goal was to stabilize that situation and
If you want to live around really
Put him in a box,
stupid
put him
people
back
with way too
that we
much
could
money,
search at a controlled
nowhere to
pace.
go. Question
How
for
did
me,
you
am I a
determine that the family was
litigant?
no longer at the house?
No, I'm not
I'm
currently
sorry.
involved in any
Receiver was no longer at the house.
litigation. I'm a litigator,
It came across in the radio traffic.
but
He
that's
was
a little
the
bit different.
direction of travel.
Okay. Now, after Officer Lamantia, am I saying that right?
Close enough.
Okay. Called out 1033.
Close enough.
Yeah, whatever.
Did that again change
Works for
where you
me.
were going?
Once I heard there had been shots fired, yes.
Okay, so after 1033 came over, shots fired.
Yes.
Where did you go
I
then?
was told to take my shirt off, so I did.
Was trying to determine where the officer was.
And were you able to do that?
At some point, yes.
And ultimately, did
Hey,
you arrive?
say what you like about Florida,
Residence
no
of
income
your-
tax is kind of
Yes.
nice.
What happened when
And
you
the
arrived?
state still sustains itself on a quarter of the budget of New York
When you
with no
arrived, did you
population.
see Officer Lamantia?
Yes.
And where was he?
Same with Nevada. We sustain ourselves on all y'all coming
He
here.
was
To,
north of the church in kind of a grass area where some trees were.
The old grassy knoll.
Trying to remember exactly where I parked. Parked
Don't shit on the states that
West Park
figured
Road,
out their
that
niche
church.
in the world.
towards the back.
Are you looking again at the map again here? You recognize this as the Modesto Church of the Brethren?
Yes.
And this is the western entrance here.
Yes.
And this is a walking circle that's it's set in the lawn.
Yes.
So you stopped your car in that general area?
Yes.
Okay. And Officer Lamantia was out on the grass?
Between the grass and the trees that I recall.
Bruce Davis, that's literally not how anything works. That might have been one of
Would
the
it refresh
best
your
comments
recollection?
I've
Look at your
ever seen
report.
when it comes to actually
have
have
the report,
criminal
right?
litigation in the justice system.
First page, the last full.
And I don't mean to be mean.
Starts with
It just is totally backwards.
Have it refresh your recollection.
Which sounds about right from somebody from Oregon.
Vic,
So
this
when-
is so
when
much
you
better
arrived,
than
where
being
did
an
you see
attorney.
all
I
that?
can't begin to tell
Yeah,
you.
true.
Ask all three of us.
What happened next?
Yes, Mike, taking off his shirt
I
is
asked
better
for
than
us to
being
get
in
a
the shirt.
shield, so that we could approach
I'll
the
go
person
rogue
that
if
was
I
laying
have
on the
to. I
ground.
don't care.
And what's the purpose of getting the shield?
For our protection, in case the person, well, it was reported the person was armed.
We want details,
Considered
Maria.
armed. It was for our protection, so we could safely approach and render aid.
And did you do that?
Yes, we did.
And when you arrived at the scene, at the place where Trevor Seaver was on the ground, what did you do?
Once Trevor was being treated and was taken care of, and we were safely able to deal with him, I pulled Joe aside to take a public safety statement, and I took a statement.
Okay. When you say provide medical treatment, their first officers provided medical treatment, including Officer Lamantia.
Yes,
And then fire and ambulance came in, right?
correct.
So when you say you pulled him aside,
Don't worry, bro.
is that when other officers
I'm with you,
were
brother.
treating you?
Yes, correct.
So the ambulance and fire hadn't arrived yet?
Shortly after, time-wise, I don't recall.
So
We're
within-
getting some shoulder there, though, Mike.
Not necessarily, they weren't right there, but they responded fairly
You
quickly.
found something there.
And in taking the public safety statement, did you, and I'm not asking about any of your statements back and forth in that regard. Did you do anything with Officer Lamantia's PBRS?
Yes,
And the PBRS is referred to as a PBRS,
yeah, body worn camera, yes.
body worn camera?
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. It's a camera that's on the body?
Yes.
Do you recall where it was on his body?
And
No.
At one point, he wore one of his glasses, but I couldn't, and I'm pretty sure that's where he had it.
Hi, Queen
But I'm
Bee.
not positive because we switched cameras to a different style. But I don't know if that's before or after that.
Okay.
How do you not know
But you
that?
secured the body worn camera.
Yes, I did.
And then you recall what you did with it?
Later, not completely after the event, but during that event, I handed it off to Lieutenant Tate.
And then he's the one that took it and docked it in the station so that it would load up to evidence.com.
Objection, speculation, lack of foundation.
It's the same.
Are you aware of what Officer Tate did with it?
Not exactly, but I'd assume he would dock it.
Was that your intent in giving it to him?
Correct.
What a stupid line to object to. This is cross, right? Like, why would the state want to object to the chain of evidence? Unless I missed something, please tell me if I did. God, they're so hard to tell apart because they're all at the same freaking table.
I mean, it is weird that they make defense counsel sit literally 6 inches
Do you
from the
recall who brought the
prosecutor.
medical kit over?
Officer Lamantia said he had a kit, went and got a med kit.
And you don't get to see the person at the podium actually asking the questions.
So when you indicated Officer Lamantia was taking cover behind a tree upon your arrival,
Yes, it was
which
beautiful.
direction was
Cordoba.
he looking?
South.
And when you look over there, that's in that general direction, that's where you saw Trevor Seaver?
He was south, just at the north side of that building.
Right, but these are leading
Nothing further
questions.
distant,
So I'm
right?
presuming that this is cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Sergeant. So on December 29, 2020, what information did you have, did you receive that caused you to roll out to this call?
Initial call was person said that their brother was on the way to the house and that he had just gotten a gun and that something was going to happen when he got there.
That's
Where
brutal.
were you when you received that information?
That's
In my patrol
putting.
car, I was parked in the parking lot of the Hobby Lobby on the north side, the old Mervyn's at Rumble and McHenry.
That's putting that information
Did you
in the
get
police
information,
before the incident.
Well, let me ask, how did you get that information? Was it over the radio, on your computer? How did you get it?
That's what you
I'm
need
just
to
waiting
do.
for
On the
Mike to
radio.
get shirtless,
And when I say over
Tammy,
the radio,
just
is
like
that
the rest
from
of you.
another
That's
officer
what I'm
or
doing.
from dispatch?
Dispatch.
Thank you.
No, but
So
that's
you
the
got the
point. That
information,
gives the
And
objective
you started to
people
drive
that
to a
Strickland is
location after you
dangerous,
received that information?
potentially
Yes.
fleeing
What
felon.
location were you actually headed toward?
Well, I was going to the West Modesto.
Got Hobby
from
Lobby
McHenry
fans.
to Briggsmore over the overpass to get into the neighborhood.
The neighborhood of the residents, of the people that
Yes.
called?
1A
So you're
represent.
headed toward the home of the reporting party that called dispatch.
Correct.
And you made a statement that you were, let's see here, trying to get so dispatch was looking for officers to respond. What do you mean by that?
In the initial, well, the units that usually work that side of town were tied up.
Okay.
On other calls. I don't know particularly what they're on, but they didn't answer it for the call.
So dispatch needed somebody to go do that, and you heard it and put yourself on it?
I'm not sure if I put myself on it or if I answered up and started that way.
Gotcha. So I'm not familiar with the city. From where you were parked, how long did it take you to get over to the residence, or at least in that general direction?
5-10 minutes, driving code 3, emergency lights and siren.
You went code 3?
As far as I remember, yes. The nature of the call would call for that.
Why would the nature of the call require code 3?
Well, it was from the onset of the call, it involved threats of a person armed with a firearm headed to a residence to harm people.
Did you order the code
your
red?
Drive over there to this location. Did you receive the officer safety bulletin?
I received the information. Yeah. Over the radio, yes, from dispatch.
Okay. I'm referring to, well, you know what an officer safety bulletin is, right?
Correct.
Did you overhear Officer Lamantia request that dispatch put that out?
I don't recall, but I did hear the information.
Gotcha. What did you hear?
That he'd made threats towards law enforcement, saying something to the effect of a good cop is a dead cop.
Did that cause you alarm?
Concern.
You made a statement during direct examination related to having unmarked cars go to the scene, and I think you said that if a marked car were to show up, they would be a target. Did I hear that correctly?
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the person, my mindset at the time with the person with those comments of towards an officer, my concern was if he was armed and a patrolman just drove into the neighborhood, that if he's maybe suicidal or wants to harm someone else, that officer is going to be a target.
Okay.
You stated that as you were driving toward the residence, you got new information and about, I guess, Mr. Seaver leaving the house. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did you change your direction of travel then?
No, because I hadn't made it all the way there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Has either side had a witness that's been
You stated that when you arrived,
prosecution?
I think you said that you directed an officer to get the shield. Correct?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm
After
actually
you arrived at the
confused.
church.
Yeah.
Aside from the low standard,
You arrived at the church, you saw Officer Lamantia.
the
and you
prosecution
directed
is
some
having a
officer to get
bad
the shield.
time.
Correct.
And what was the purpose of the shield?
To protect us from any attack, since the person was presumed armed at the time.
The low standard always saves them, though.
Yeah, fine. They survived this
Experience
standard.
If a suspect is down on the ground.
Spoken like a seasoned defense attorney. Yeah. This sounds good, except they don't have to prove a damn thing. I'm not bitter. Let's carry
The
on.
bind over a ham
They're
sandwich.
armed, but it's
Yes.
still
Yes.
Do they still pose a risk to the officers?
Yes.
Yeah, but even if they go
Can
to
you
straight up
define for us
trial,
what
like
staging
if
means?
this is what they've got, this is directed.
Staging is getting close to a call.
That's why I voted no in the poll.
Where groups of
When I was in the
officers
chat,
meet
I voted
and then
no.
go in as a team or be assigned as other duties if needed.
Okay. So
When you kick
that's
it off-
different. I misunderstood. That's different than what you described as putting a box around the area.
Setting a perimeter,
Yes, sir.
well, kind of different and it can be the same.
Nah.
Because if I get to the intersection.
I like all the
You
info.
just see crying.
I'm the first one there. That's
Oh,
point
they
one.
get love.
And then we
They
can
get
set
love.
the
I'm
box.
almost an hour with a
And
getting
from
any
from
first
there.
ginger comments.
Did you know where, when you wanted to set up the box, did you know where Mr. Seaver was located?
Did I know where he was? No, I didn't. I had a general direction of travel.
You feel better,
And
man?
Mr. Seaver was on foot.
Yes, that's it. That brightens my day there.
Did you know where other officers were in
Yeah,
relation to
Mom.
where you were?
I did not.
That's why, Mom, I always thought you had good
When you're
taste.
setting up a perimeter to try to box somebody in, is there an optimal size to it? Or can it just be large or?
It depends on the nature of the event. Generally, you want to start bigger because it's easier to go bigger to smaller than to start small and then go big.
Leave it to my chat to make fun of the most serious case you can think of.
So this church, is it in a residential or commercial area?
It's in a residential area.
So we have homes around the area.
Correct.
And it's 11:30 in the morning?
So it's somewhere around there.
If Mr. Seaver is
Like,
running
honest
to
to
the
God, this is a
neighborhood
case that never should have been
with,
brought up.
firearm, because everybody was assuming he had a firearm.
If I'm being honest to God,
I
unless they
think-
have some sort
I
of
think this is a
real,
better case to prosecute than the Cummings case, but that's not saying much.
fair point.
I mean, and barely.
Fair point.
There's a risk to the neighborhood.
What types of risk?
Well,
But there's
break into
nothing
someone's house
here.
and take them hostage. He could break in the house, cause harm. Or any pedestrians walking down the street.
Do you think it was important to try to put this box around Mr. Seaver, this perimeter?
Sing it.
I mean, Ben, let me ask you this. With
Yeah,
what
Jamie.
little you know right now, you don't think that if you pulled the right judge, you could get a directed verdict on this? Which,
Oh, yeah.
by the way,
Remember
for
what your-
that, directed verdicts never happen.
Do you
But
have
we're
a
really
number that
close
you
on
use over
this
the
one.
radio that identified you on this date?
Or
True,
Call sign.
but
Call sign.
this judge might not let it go to trial, which is
Not exactly
better.
sure. It might have been 820.
From a
you know, it could be
1018.
split too. They could bind over some charges. They could
I'm gonna approach you. Stipulate.
deny some of them.
I don't know what it is.
There's all sorts of possibilities.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's do that. There's a stipulation that's been proposed that.
Yeah, I can take my shirt off once we have a chat.
20
Like,
on that date.
there we go.
I do
People say
tell.
stipulate.
My naughty chat is a perfect reflection of
Off,
me.
And there we go. Put it back on now. Woo.
I'll just show him.
This just seems like such a weak case to me.
I'm gonna show you.
But you can see the politics of it every time.
Before I do
And
that.
it's understandable. Somebody's dead.
Basically, call history of things
Sure.
that go through dispatch.
That
or
doesn't make it
index
a
in the-
crime.
In the computer.
I'm gonna start on page.
This is the one thing that's actually driven me a little bit nuts.
We need that. We need that. Wait a second. We need that quote. We need to clip that for John's channel. Dead
Why?
body doesn't make it a crime. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
I get it, but it's such a lawyer thing to say.
No, honestly, I'm genuinely getting frustrated because it came out of these academies that have weird ideas of how to deal with the law. This whole idea of criminalizing professional negligence circumstances is a totally modern phenomenon, and it's just insane.
Yes,
You know?
I agree.
The nurse that accidentally poured the wrong prescription in the pill bottle, or like all of those are civil suits, absolutely.
I apologize, Your Honor.
But they're not crimes.
Well, John was an insurance defense attorney, not a criminal defense attorney.
No, I was never a criminal defense attorney.
But she's absolutely right. Criminalizing civil matters is, a terrible, terrible trend.
But it's becoming a more common concept, which is really frustrating.
I agree.
Professional negligence is a civil tort. It's not a crime.
Well, yeah, I mean, Vic, if you're going to treat the body like a backpack, that's definitely a crime.
No, I'm not taking my shirt off.
I'm waiting for the next super chat, and I'll take mine off.
Oh, gotcha.
Maybe when we're done with this and you go onto my channel and you want to donate chunk of change, maybe I'll
Ready
take
for the
it.
next? Okay, ready for the next super chat?
You're not taking it off on someone else's channel?
I'm not having to pay you for me to prostitute myself.
There we go.
I
All right.
don't particularly fancy you, my pimp.
Woo! Here we go. Yes. Keep it going there. Naked. Okay, let me get it back on there. Oh, wait. There we go. Now you can't see. There we go.
Ooh. Wait, fifth shooting from the same officer? How do you guys figure everything out about a case?
Yeah, he has a really bad. He has a bad record. It's not fifth shooting from the same officer, but he was involved in 4 prior shootings. I believe 3 of them in the last 10 years. He's been an officer since 2007. This is the research I did, Mike, because I actually care about my audience and actually providing them information every now and again.
That's where you've
wow.
gone all wrong, John.
Provide information.
Seriously.
Now
have I taught you nothing? Have I taught you nothing?
I wrote it down.
Clearly not.
I need ideas for my channel. I'm just starting out. So.
All the educational streams get me absolutely nothing. It's only the salacious stuff that actually brings in views. So, maybe I lose at the end of the day, but I can keep fighting.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you can't do serious videos about Gideon v. Wainwright. I mean, what are you thinking there, brother?
I thought that was pretty cool with the video from the 14th
Yeah, you did.
circuit.
You did.
I thought that was nice having a little bit of multimedia. I thought that was kind of well put together.
Totally making that super chat. That's a big one.
They were or weren't, because sometimes people get assists on call that aren't there, and sometimes people that are on the call aren't there.
Let's hope so, Maria.
Yeah.
And I think you said your call sign?
820.
A fair point, Don.
M820 highlighted in pink on that chat report.
Right. If you're in inner city Detroit or this, you might have to shoot your gun more often than somebody in the country.
Right.
So if you could, by looking at the pink highlighted area, could you tell us what time you were dispatched to the call?
According to this, 11:33.
Can you tell us what time you arrived on?
There we go. See? Odonata. Didn't even realize that it was so recent for Gideon. Thought it was in the Constitution. Like, that to me actually means something, that people learn that. How recent it is that you actually do have a right
Says
to
11:38.
And I need to drill down other seconds also, or just?
Yes, it says 11:38 and 39 seconds, I believe.
Yeah, me getting dragged into the chat is pretty much a staple of me being a guest on this channel. So I'm going to stop.
You on the scene?
But honest to God, I don't think that this cop is saying anything of any value.
Did you hear the shots fired?
I did not.
I have been listening to both.
I asked that question, but you told us you were only driving code 3, lights and sirens.
Yes.
At any time did you shut that down?
Generally, I'd shut them down when I got close to the area. It's not to tip someone off I'm coming. But there's radios in there, phones, and all kinds of things.
Enlightening. Thank you for that testimony.
Were you the first, I know you're a sergeant, were you the first law enforcement officer to arrive and see Officer Lamantia at the scene?
I don't believe so.
Do you recall how many officers were there before you arrived?
I don't.
Okay. We know that at least Officer
Excellent.
Pena showed up because he's the person you tasked with getting the shield. Correct. Okay. How about Booza? Was Booza there?
I know Booza was there. I don't know when he got there. I don't know if he was there prior to me or not.
Okay.
I don't know what this business is all about, but Maria's nutty as they come. Oh, that's all I'll say.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I, for one, think that his testimony was absolutely riveting and has fundamentally changed my opinion as to what occurred that evening.
Dispatch. Oh, yeah, see, so you got me.
You got it wrong. No, I'll correct it right now. Sergeant, I'm going to show you a document again just so that we're clear and inaccurate. I'm going to show you page 3 of 42 of the CAD report. And I'm going to ask you again to please look at the time where this indicates that you were dispatched. So we make sure we get it right, okay?
Okay.
Take a look at that.
Wow, FD Food Fairy. Way to sound really rapey. Good job.
Thanks,
Dispatch time shows 11:31.
So there was a mistake earlier. It wasn't 11:33. It was 11:31.
Correct.
You stated during your direct examination that you called for air support, but there was none available.
Correct.
Well, yeah.
When you called your request for air support, did you know where Mr. Seaver was?
I did not.
When you were, did you make the request over the radio for officers to assist you in setting up a perimeter?
Not that I recall.
Does he recall anything?
And regarding the staging, did you,
Oh, Andrew,
Sergeant,
we
did you
gotta
make
get
it
you
over
out.
to responding officers to stage at any time during this call?
No. No.
He literally recalls nothing.
Event changed.
Why is he a
So
witness?
there's two events, kind of. There's priest Trevor leaving the residence, and then there's initial response to the home.
Okay, so is it fair to say then that this entire event, when you got on it at 11:31 through 11:38, changing pretty quickly?
It changed. I wouldn't say it changed quickly, but it changed by the time I got there.
Okay. But you felt the need, based on your prior testimony, that this
I'm afraid that's what we're dealing with, Bill.
demanded an immediate response.
Yes.
On your way to the location, and I'm going to say now the shots fired location, because you did arrive eventually, did you see the unmarked car that was in a collision?
I did not.
Welcome to Law Talk with
That
John.
was in a collision?
Pleasure to see you all.
I didn't know there was an unmarked car involved in the incident
John
until after the
Trish,
fact.
honestly, I think
So
I
that
speak
didn't
for
go
Mike
to
when
your
I
thought
say that
process
he's somewhere
while you were
between the
responding
two.
to the call. You just learned about that.
Ben is probably the
It
more
would have been part of my response.
contrite,
known I had a unmarked car.
respectful individual. I am what Mike would like to be after one too many White Claws. I'll take further questions because this
I
witness
think you
is
testified that
an idiot
after
and knows
you
nothing.
arrived and the shield was deployed and you approached Mr. Seaver, it was Officer Lamantia that got the medical back?
Yes.
Officer Lamantia also rendered first aid.
He started to, but I stopped him from rendering it.
And why'd you stop him?
He'd just been involved in a shooting.
Yeah, and so you're gonna have to explain that to us. Why is it important to get the person involved in the shooting away?
Well, I wanted to make sure his mind was clear. We had other officers there that were able to attend to Trevor, and therefore my focus was to investigate or start to investigate and make sure Joe was okay also.
Thank you, Sergeant.
When you say that the call demanded an immediate response, at what point was that?
The initial the initial call of that Trevor was armed with the firearm coming to the residence.
I'm still stuck on favorite supervillain.
I thought
thinking about it.
There, meaning the RP and the mother.
So that's before it changed and you were informed that he had left the hospital.
Correct.
And that was when you started with
All right, let me sit on that one.
Yes.
I'll answer it later.
Calling helicopters.
How long since these? I don't know what incident you're referring
No,
to.
I had actually called for those things prior to responding, prior to Trevor leaving.
Okay, so in the initial call, you were working both phases.
Yes.
You were responding.
Yes.
To the immediate issue, but you're also already setting up staging UC cars, CHP air, sheriff's air.
Yes.
That's how it worked.
Yeah, my goal was to obviously prevent him from getting to the house. So if we could spot him prior to him getting to the house, that would have been the best situation for all of us.
So it's only after he left that you went to the staging, specifically
Yes.
staging.
Correct, because now I have an armed person in an unknown area with the direction.
If I actually had to pick a supervillain, it would probably be the Joker. I like the unpredictability factor.
Yes, thank you.
But there is actually a
So
method
you
behind
learned at
that.
some
And you just don't
point
see it until
that
it comes to fruition.
Mr. Seaver
I'm going to go with that
possibly
one.
had a gun and was going to his home and his family was afraid,
That's
correct?
my best.
Then you learn later
Shot in
on
the
that
dark.
Mr. Seaver had
I
changed
probably will
directions and
disagree
wasn't
with
going
it,
toward the home.
but that's what I'm going with for now.
Well, it sounded, the information I had, at some point he was at the house and it was reported that he was vandalizing the home.
True, that's correct. And when did he become less of a threat?
As far as the call, he didn't at that time, just because he left.
You know, Robert Larkin, I'm okay with that estimation.
Having in mind that my perception of that day was that they were at the home.
Yes.
He was a threat until he left, until they said he was leaving.
Although I don't know
You
what the
don't
difference
think,
between
a
train
person
under
went into a
and
neighborhood with a gun is a threat?
Right.
Well, a threat to them is to be.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, thank you, sir.
I'm also fun at the
So,
bar.
still in your mind as a
That's
police
cool.
officer, a law enforcement professional, you see this person who you believe has a gun based on his family's reporting, walking through a neighborhood, he still poses a threat, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Can you redirect or redirect?
God, please no.
Okay. May this witness be excused?
Thank you.
Yes.
Sergeant, your
witness said no,
responsibilities to
absolutely
testify have now
nothing,
concluded.
and
Thank you for
speaks
being
for
here.
nothing,
Please do
and
not
said
discuss your
nothing
testimony with anybody
40
as this
minutes.
proceeding is ongoing. The
I just
exception
took
of
off
the
my
attorneys that
hoodie,
are sitting before you.
Tammy.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
I was going to do that on
And
camera.
on that date, did you have a
And show the
specific
layer.
assignment
I mean, what do you want?
related to an officer
Good
involved
work.
shooting at the
Yeah, here's the hoodie.
Brethren Church?
Yes, we were contacted and advised to respond out to the
Yeah, is
church
that
for the
better?
shooting.
Okay, that was at 2301.
Woodland Avenue, yes,
I was swallowing at the same time. 2301 Woodland.
yes.
And that event
All right,
occurred on December
Robert.
29th.
Fair enough. I
23rd.
appreciate that.
Correct.
Okay, and then on December 30th, you conducted
All
an
right,
interview.
screw it.
Yes, I did.
I'm going to the road because
Officer
it's
Joe Lamantia.
already almost
And
6
see President
o'clock,
Court today.
Yes,
and
yes.
I still have to
And
do
could you
my
point
own
out
thing
or
after
describe
this.
an article of
So
clothing he's currently
let's do it.
He's sitting
Right.
to your
Make
left,
your
all the way
dad
at the end
happy.
of the table, wearing a yellow tie and a blue shirt.
Is he out of here?
Please
Oh, we
identify
go.
the defendant.
Looks that way.
Yeah.
And in this interview, did that regard the events of
Oh,
December?
good. At least he's a
29th?
placeholder, though, so I can
Yes.
take my shirt off
And
during the
did you
super
discuss
chats.
Officer Lamantia's background?
With who? I'm sorry.
With all.
I'm ready.
Yes,
What's
at the
he
beginning
ready?
of the interview,
He
we
likes
established
money.
background
He needs
information,
more.
some foundational
They'll be
questions.
waiting for it, Ben.
And, by who was he employed?
He was a Modesto police
I'm
officer.
ready.
And how long had he been a Modesto police officer?
I want to say it was around 12 years, I believe. I have to check to confirm.
Okay. Did you discuss his assignment on December 29th of 2020?
Yes.
And what was that?
He was assigned to the crime reduction team.
And how long had he been?
There you go. I gave you chat what they
I
wanted.
believe he said 3 years.
And
Oh, we got a robe. We got a shirtless Ben.
did you discuss with him whether that was a
It all
normal,
happens at Law Talk with Mike.
patrol capacity or a special assignment?
It's a specialized assignment.
Okay, so they're not normally on patrol.
They are on patrol out in the city, but they don't typically respond to calls for service unless they're higher priority. They have tasks that they're assigned to go take care of problem houses or neighborhood nuisance type issues.
But they are in a police vehicle.
Yes, in full uniform police vehicle.
And so they are authorized to respond to incidents.
Oh, of course.
For assistance if somebody's not available.
Correct.
Did you discuss with him any collateral assignments?
Collaterals, yes, we did.
And did he have any collateral assignments?
Yes, he did. I believe he's a full training officer. He's a member of the SWAT team. I don't remember if there's any others.
You mentioned auxiliary motors.
Oh, yes, that's right, auxiliary motors.
Did you discuss with him?
This is not the trainer you're
sense
looking
of how
for.
often he participated in training?
Yes, throughout the interview, we discussed training several times.
I'm asking about timing as far as how often he would have training and what units he would train with.
Yes. Are you referring to firearms training specifically?
Just
Or?
training in general. Let me ask it this way. Did you discuss with him what kind of training he did for SWAT?
Yes, we discussed that.
And how often was that?
I believe he said it was monthly.
And that included firearms training?
Yes.
That include training regarding situations that might come about on the street?
Yes, different types of scenarios.
Thank
Is there any
you.
other training
That's
mandated
very flattering. I appreciate that.
that you discussed with him?
It's firearms training. We
This is
discussed
my
that.
smoking
And how
jacket.
often is that?
Well, for the department, it's not as often
I
as
don't know,
Officer
Ben. You do
Lamantia
look very much
did
like
it
you have a
as his
shirt.
assignment in the SWAT team. I believe it was every
Oh,
other
what?
month. They qualified with their firearms, but I
You
believe
do still
firearms
look very
training
much
was
like
part
you
of
have a
the
shirt on.
monthly training
Yeah,
On the SWAT.
there's a
on the
reason for
SWAT
that.
team.
There we go.
Is there also a 2-time-a-year mandated training?
Yes, that's the department training
My shirt's off.
for all officers.
So it's not every other month, it's twice a year.
Yes, I've lived in Florida for
That's
almost
our
2 years
standard
now.
firearms qualification training. So the SWAT team.
I just try to avoid
does
the
training
sun.
with firearms much more frequently as part of their assignment.
So you were talking
Yeah.
qualification.
Yes.
So
You
that's
said it.
What's every month because it's on SWAT as well as the monthly training?
Correct.
Okay. And then the mandated training is 2 times a year.
Yes, for the all officers in the department.
Now, did you discuss with Officer Lamantia?
I often wonder what new people
his
think
duty
when
weapon?
they show up to a stream.
And did he tell you what kind of weapon he used?
Yes, he did.
And
Is there an
What the hell's going on
unsubscribe
here?
button?
I remember it was a Legion something. I don't recall exactly.
I thought I was
what it
going to talk about law shit. Now it's all just about people wearing shirts or
Yes.
something.
Ostensibly, that's the plan. Sure.
I would direct you to the 12:30 interview at page 4.
Oh, dear.
See if that
Yo,
reflects the correct
KTB, that's a cool idea.
question.
We pick a case, and every time somebody loses an objection, you take it off a piece of clothing.
Okay, yes.
To refresh
Strip
your
objection
recollection, you read
poker.
it yourself.
Okay.
Every time it's the same.
Or take a shot. You can
Yes,
do
I
one or the
remember
other.
what
We can make it a game.
And so what kind of weapon did he use?
It's a Sig Sauer P320. It has some X5 Legion.
Okay, and it's what type of round is that? Fire?
I think it was a 9mm.
Okay. And was that
I don't know
gun
anything.
or his own gun?
Yeah, that was his personally owned firearm.
So how is it that an officer comes to
The
you with
officers
a
are clearly
firearm?
trying to help the defendant. That may be justified or not, but they clearly are.
How it goes about,
Yeah.
goes about using their own personal
So I think that would actually operate backward from what you're
Is there some process that
suggesting,
they go through to
Robert,
use their own gun, or is it just a list of guns?
because
that an
it's
officer
not a
can buy and
Benedict
use?
Arnold
In
situation.
our policy,
Not
we have a
recalling
list of firearms
something
that they're authorized
is
to
better for
use.
the defendant
no
than
specialized
saying
application
literally
process or anything within the
anything.
department.
It's
If
the
it's
same
on that list,
concept
they
of
can use
just
it.
don't talk to the police.
I believe so. They have to.
What does that have to do with
They're
shirts?
not turning on.
They're allowed to carry it on the street.
Asking for a friend.
Did he indicate to you whether there was any items that were attached?
Yeah, it's not turning on the person.
I believe the
That's
only
offensive
thing that was
Arnold
on was a
situation.
flashlight.
It really is helping them
And that was
to
attached
not
to the gun?
recall.
Yes.
And how did he carry his gun?
He said it was in a drop-down holster on his right hip.
Now, is that what would be called the duty holster?
Yes,
The duty
And it's on
holster.
his right side?
correct.
Did he have any other law enforcement equipment with him on December 29th?
Are you specifically referring to
Oh, turning on the prosecution?
like impact weapons,
Absolutely. Are
lethal
you kidding?
equipment? I mean, he was in uniform, wearing a vest, in a
A lot of times
master
the
police
cops
vehicle.
hate prosecution.
All those I would identify as equipment.
Okay. I'm talking
Why
about
do you
equipment
think
to
the
use
chief
for
of the
self-protection
Hillsborough
or
County
somebody,
Police Department
like a baton?
lauded the
Baton
fact
No, he had no
that Ron
baton,
DeSantis
or
hired
taser,
the
or
state's
pepper spray with
prosecutor
him
from the
at
13th
that time.
Circuit? Tampa
Did he
Police
indicate
was
to
like,
you
oh, we're unshackled
on
now. We can
12/28,
actually enforce the law.
whether he was
Cool.
wearing a-
Thank you.
And we call them PVARs, you apparently call them body worn camera.
So
yeah, the P. We call
there can
it
be,
PVRs.
depending
The
on how it
Axon
works,
body-worn
there
camera,
can
he was
be
wearing
a
it.
conflict
Did he indicate
of
to you where that
interest
was on
between
his
the
body?
prosecution.
He said it was, I
Between
believe,
the
on
prosecutor's
the
department
left
and-
side of his chest, or lapel. I think he called it lapel.
So would that be up on a collar? Did he describe to you specifically, or was it up on a collar on the lapel or down here?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Okay. Are you acquainted with the types of cameras that are used?
Yes.
So
This guy reminds me of somebody, and I cannot think of
like a
who.
flashlight, or is it one of those that's flat and it has a camera in the middle?
Same.
I don't want to guess. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Did he indicate to you whether his PVRS was operating normally?
Yes, he said it was functioning normally during his shift.
And did he indicate to you during this specific incident whether it was activated?
He said he activated it.
From what I've seen, yes, but
And
I'm
you
not.
discuss with him his patrol vehicle?
I'm sorry, ask the question again?
Did you discuss with him the patrol vehicle he was assigned on
I'm not
December 29th?
completely
Yes,
convinced.
I believe it was a fully marked Modesto police vehicle, and I believe he said it was car 49.
I would generally agree with that opinion.
Did he have a partner with him, or was he on his own?
By himself.
Now, specific as it relates to December 29th of 2020, did he indicate to you what time
No,
he
it
started
reminds
his
me of
shift?
somebody during
Yeah, I
the
believe
Amber Heard
the
trial.
shift starts at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I
Okay.
forget.
And did he
One
indicate
of
to you
the
at some
security-
point
maybe one of the security
in the late
guards.
morning hours?
He kind of
whether
reminds me of
was
the
out in
dude who's
vehicle
in
or
Santa
whether he was in the
Monica.
office?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes, he was in the office for a period of time.
Okay, and then at some point, did he leave?
Yes.
Okay, and at some point, did he hear a call regarding a security check?
Yes, I believe he said he was heading to one of his tasks, one of the nuisance types calls, and he was in the area of McKinney and Briggsmore when the call related to this incident on Woodland was dispatched. And the dispatcher asked for an available unit who could respond, and he answered up and said he could go.
Did he indicate to you why he indicated he would take it?
I remember him saying something about he could tell with the, I don't remember the exact words he said. I'd have to check, but he said something to the effect of,
Refresh your recollection to review your report.
yes.
Okay, so again, referring to 1230, page 8. Right in the middle of the page, starting with your question, starting with all right. And we don't have any stamps on these, so page 8. Thank you.
Yes, so it refreshes my recollection.
So what did he
Yeah,
indicate
everything
about the
that he's
call,
saying,
that
again,
made
the
him
whole
take
idea is
the
that he
call?
came
The
up
dispatcher's
on,
Better late than never,
voice
ATB.
sounded concerned.
he came upon the circumstance
Did he
with
indicate
the understanding
anything
that you
further
had a
in regards to
potentially
what
armed individual
his senses were?
engaged in
His senses?
felonious activity.
In other
When
words,
you
was there anything
arrive, he
particular
starts
about
to
the call
flee.
that
You have no reason to know that he's
caused
not
him to take
armed.
it?
Everything you have is that he is. It's really hard for me to argue that
I'm not sure
he's
I
not justified in
understand what you
use of
mean.
force.
Again, referring you to page 8, the same paragraph at the very end, if that would refresh your recollection.
Sure.
And that's in the not the last row, but starting with the second to last row and the last row.
So, I'm sorry, when I look at page 8, it was something when he was talking about going to a residence to deal with a complaint that worked its way up to his desk.
I'm referring you specifically to your question that starts with all right, and Mr. Lamantia's question or answer starting with I was.
Oh, I'm sorry, right in the middle. Okay. Yeah.
So the bottom line of that paragraph and the second to last line. That refreshes your recollection.
So again, yeah, he said that based on the tone of voice from the dispatcher, he could tell that it was important, and he answered up and said that he was available to go.
So that drew his attention.
It's a little specific there.
Her tone of voice, yes.
It is.
And did he describe to you the task, going not referring to the call that he put himself on, but the task that he was initially going out to go do? What did he indicate that was? Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
I'm sorry.
You can answer it.
Okay.
Overruled.
He said it was some sort of a quality of life issue, a lower grade task.
And he indicated that his impression was nobody else was on this call that he took. Objection, leading.
Sustain.
Did he indicate to you whether or not he knew of anyone else that was on the call, that was taking that call at the beginning?
No, the dispatcher was,
Overruled it when asked that way. You can answer.
Yeah.
the
for-
dispatcher was asking for an available unit because nobody was responding yet.
And where was he when he took the initial call?
I believe it was somewhere in
No
McKinney, Richmond,
speculation. That's actually a good objection.
or Norwegian. I think he said Norwegian, somewhere near a church, I believe he said.
The Norwegian is just north of Briggsmore on the.
Yes.
Okay. And
Why
did
do
he tell
you
what
object
detail
on
the call
one
was
and
that
not
he
the
heard
other?
on
I've
the
never understood that.
Yes, he did.
Sometimes they
I asked-
object
no,
on
I
the
asked
bad
him to
one if they
describe what
let
he was
the
responding to. He
good
said
one go because they lost the previous.
that family was calling regarding, I believe he said it was the sister that was calling
I
on
see that way too
her
often.
brother who was supposed to be coming to the house and was armed with a gun. I believe it was something to that effect. I'd have to look to recite specifically exactly what he said.
Do I literally need to
Refresh
read
recollection.
objective reasonableness into the record?
starting at the December 30th, page 9.
Yeah, so it's basically, as I had described, the sister calling, saying her brother had purchased a firearm and was on foot to the house, and it was something about, you're not going to like what's going to happen when I get there.
Now, you also interviewed him not only on December 30th, but on.
Do I need to read
January
something that's
28th of
into the record?
2021?
Yes, we did a second interview.
Okay. And
God, Mike, we're lucky Bronca
Now,
had
you
to
go
step
into,
away because he'd be losing his
the
mind
original
right now.
call and his knowledge regarding whether he knew where the victim family, this family calling 911 was.
Yes.
And what did he indicate in that regard, whether he knew where they were at that time?
We focused quite a bit of time on that particular topic. And when it boils down to it, it didn't appear that he was sure. At one point, he said he
Low
thought they
carbon
could be
easy.
at a church across the street,
That's their selling proposition.
or that they possibly
It's not
went back to
particularly
their
good.
house. Or
I thought you were describing yourself.
But those two things are good enough.
yes, that was Sergeant Freeman.
You were both in there for the entire conversation?
Yes, he's my internal affairs. He was my internal affairs partner at that time.
Mike is
Asking
light
you
and
to take a look
clean.
at that
I don't know
line,
if I would
starting with
necessarily
what?
use those two particular
and then
adjectives, but
Officer Lamantia's response starting with, they said.
He said that they were at the original.
Well, let me stop you.
Yeah.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Sure.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And
Truly's-
does he indicate
Truly's
to you
the
at
same thing.
Original call when he's at McHenry, Briggsmore, Norwegian area.
Or, you know, you could actually be a man and drink actual liquor.
And when was his
And high
knowledge
noon
where the
too.
family was at that
All
time?
the same thing.
Victory
All the same
Life
thing until
Church,
one of them
which is
sponsors me.
Basically across the street, catted corner to the location where the shooting occurred.
Then that one's
Are you
clearly
acquainted with that
superior.
area of town?
Yes.
Okay. And so taking a look at exhibit number 1,
Yeah, I
see
agree.
that it's an overview of the woodlands. and
That requires
area.
effort. This isn't a can and it's already cold.
Okay. I'm not wearing my
Or
glasses.
you
so
take a
that's a little bit
glass,
far from
you
me.
open a bottle, you
Yeah.
pour it into the glass,
That's fine with me.
and you drink from the glass.
It sounds easy, doesn't it?
I've done it
So
before.
I'm asking you, in exhibit 1, do you recognize that
You've
area?
tested this hypothesis, have you?
Yes, I do. Okay.
It's
And
not
the,
super
Victory
complicated.
Life Church, do you see that on that map?
I've only screwed it up a few times.
This here.
Okay, so right near the location labeled Tender Hearts Child Care Center?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Now, also in the January 28th interview, real quick, did you discuss with him his arrival in the general area of the scene? Depicted on that map?
Andrea understands me.
Yes.
Andrea understands me.
And did you discuss with him the Victory Life
I
Center?
mean, the other alternative
Where
is
it was,
just
the Victory
open
Life
the bottle and drink from that.
Church
Well,
Center.
yeah, but that's good. I
Did
like
you
the
discuss with him
I like the cold fizz of
whether
the
he knew where
deal.
that was?
Yes, we did.
Do you not own a
Yeah, what did he say?
refrigerator?
He knew
I do.
of its location, but I remember him
I'm
saying
rincy
he
like
did
that.
not
I have one.
see anybody there when he drove by because he was focused on getting to the location where the suspect or victim where Trevor was last seen.
Trevor?
Yes.
Robert, that's a damn fine alternative. In fact, it's a
Now, going
superior
back to
alternative.
The interview of December 30th, did
And
you discuss with him
not
the
a
next
fan of-
radio,
I'm not a fan of clear
or whether
liquor.
he heard any more radio?
When I'm out, I usually get Tito's and soda with a lime.
All right.
Let's be honest.
I'm just not a fan of clear liquors generally. I know a lot of people that are
I don't
absolutely
recall that.
opposite.
I think so, but again, I'd have to refer back to my report to.
Woodford Reserve, fantastic.
December 30th at page 9.
I'm going to splurge. Angela
December 30th, page nine.
Engie is a fantastic
Okay. What was your question again?
liquor. It's absolutely great.
Did you discuss with him whether he heard over the radio any immediate follow-up after he logged in?
Yeah, so there was a supplement entered into the call by our real-time
Sure
crime
have.
center regarding a officer safety bulletin that was
Did he indicate who that was related to?
related to
Somebody
the
who was
receiver.
formerly engaged
And,
with
Did
psychiatrists.
he ask any?
It
did he
is
radio
a
back
challenging
or ask
profession.
either
sir.
RTCC or dispatch anything relevant to that bulletin?
Did he radio anything back? Is that what you're asking?
Did he ask anything be done specifically?
Oh, we went from food to alcohol here in the
I
chat.
believe he asked it to be sent out to the people on the call.
I do like a nice
So they were
Calvados too.
also
That'll slow y'all
aware.
down.
Did he indicate to you any?
But here's the problem: is like it
recollections
almost
brought back
doesn't
into
matter
his
because he's
mind?
not saying
Yes,
anything.
he had
interesting.
previously reviewed that bulletin prior.
Okay. And did it bring back any of it, any prior personal experience of his?
Guinness Extra Stout is fantastic.
Action relevance.
What is the relevance? Is it regarding this victim in particular?
Not regarding this victim.
And what is the relevance?
I will withdraw the question if that's the defense's request.
I'll just sustain the objection.
Now, in a patrol
Yeah.
car, an officer in a patrol car.
That's an
is there a
ass
way
kicking
for him
mix right there.
To read through a call?
Yeah, so our cars are equipped with, we call it an MDC, a computer basically, in the center next to his seat, and
Open your book to
all of our
page
dispatch
22.
information is listed on that.
Okay. Did he indicate to you whether he did that, read through the call?
I believe he said he briefly skimmed through it or hit the highlights, something to that effect.
I'd ask you if it would refresh your recollection to review that, the section regarding that.
Yes.
So that would be 1230 at page 10.
So what I previously said must have been regarding him reviewing the bulletin. I think that's when he said he briefly hit the highlights. But in this case, when I asked him about reading through the call, he said there was limited information in the beginning.
Yo, Ken
and
Ritchie,
just the
you
initial
don't think you've
statements by the
ever had
party.
friggin' Everclear?
about how they were going to, Trevor was going to come to the
That
family.
counts.
I've had Everclear. Oh yeah.
Did that answer your question, or do you want me to go on?
I've had real Georgia moonshine,
You answered the
but
question.
yeah,
That
Everclear
answers
counts.
the question. That's fine. I'll go to the next question.
Okay.
Did you discuss with him whether he saw other units start to assist themselves?
Yes, he did see one of our detectives in an unmarked who operates in an unmarked car assist himself to the call.
Bear in mind, we're still in the preliminary hearing here.
Called the detective
Day
while
one
they were
of
on their way,
preliminary
just to
hearing.
make, since that detective would not
I
have a
still
computer or an
intend to
NBC,
actually do
he
a
called the
stream
detective
after
to make
this,
sure he
right?
was aware of the
I
situation.
didn't
and what
expect this to be
they were
3.5
responding to.
hours
Did you
long.
also discuss
Well, it's 'cause you
other
don't listen
officers
to me. I told
responding
you.
to this call in
I
the
know.
January
Listening
28th?
to you is like a 50-50
Yes.
gamble.
And did he give you
Sometimes
any
it's a really
more
great idea. Sometimes it's the
firm
worst decision I made in my life.
discussion of whether he knew all
Remember
other
that, Ben.
officers were coming?
He did say he knew other
Which one is it
officers were
today?
coming, but didn't know their location.
Right now, it's
And
probably
did you
still a
then discuss with them
50-50. We'll
if
see how
there
many
was any
people
way that he
actually
could determine
decide
their
to
location?
listen to my
Yes.
stuff after
And
going
What did he
through this
respond in that
bullshit.
regard?
He said he could have
Which, by the way, you're both
seen the
welcome
location on the
to come.
GPS
It's
on
a
our
really
computer system,
interesting,
or
kind of
asked
weird
Is that
case.
something
I
called
sent it to
ABL?
my.
ABL,
And
yes.
what does that stand for?
I'll post a little bit in the private chat, Ben.
The acronym, I'm not sure.
Right.
But it was on the ABL that he could have looked for at least some people?
Yes, the officers, if you set up your computer to show their location, they'll pop up on the map of where they're at.
Okay, did he indicate, I'm sorry, I didn't hear all that. Can I have that read back, please?
You can.
Thank you. Response. Answer. Yes. The officers, if you set up your computers to show their location, they'll pop up on the map where they're at. Thank you very much. Did he indicate any other way that he could determine where other officers responding were?
Asked on the radio. He said he could have asked them on the radio.
And did you talk with him whether he had ever done that before?
Yes.
And what did he say in that regard?
He said yes, he's done that before.
And did you talk with him regarding this specific instance on December 29th of 2020, whether he did that?
I did.
And what did he say in that regard?
He did not inquire on the location of other officers in this incident.
Now, you previously indicated that he asked for the bulletin to be resent regarding Trevor Sieber.
Yes.
And he indicated that, well, let me ask you, when did he receive the bulletin?
Officer Lamantia?
Yes.
Yes, he received it.
And did he indicate to you whether he reviewed it?
Yes, that's where I was mistaken earlier. He said he read through it briefly and hit the
Take a
highlights.
look, see if that's interesting to you. It's just weird to me. And so I wanted to take a look at it.
Did
I
you
have the
discuss with
document.
him
I
what
have
the
some
highlights
news
are that he
articles.
recalled?
Hot garbage.
He mentioned Sieber previously making threats towards law enforcement and saying something to the effect of good MPD cop is a dead cop or something to that effect. But he remembered reading that part of it about the threats he made specifically towards Modesto police officers.
And anything else regarding Trevor Sieber specifically?
Something that Trevor was a self-identified motorcycle gang member or Hells Angels. He recalled that part.
Well, let me ask you this. Did he see anything or give you any information of anything that he saw that would enable him to find Trevor Sieber?
Oh, his photo. He did say he also saw his picture on the bulletin.
Did he indicate to you whether he had any previous contact with Trevor Sieber?
He did not recall ever contacting him before. I think he said, it's possible that he had stopped him, but nothing that he remembered.
And did he indicate to you any previous contact with Trevor Sieber's family?
He said he did not know the family. No contact, I'm sorry.
Now, at some point, did he get closer to 2301 Woodland?
Yes.
Did you talk to him regarding his route?
Yes.
And where, how was his route? Objection, are we referring to Officer Lamantia or Mr. Seaver's route?
I understood the question. You can clarify, but I understood it to be Mr. Lamantia.
Did you discuss with Officer Lamantia his route from Norwegian and McHenry and Breedsmore area to Woodland?
Yes.
And what was that?
He went westbound on Briggsmore, which basically curves, and when you come over the overpass, you come southbound on Carpenter. He said he was southbound on Carpenter, made a right-hand turn to go westbound on Woodland.
Okay, now during the trip across Briggsmore and southbound Carpenter, did he discuss with you any further follow-ups that they received?
So at this time, I believe he recalled updates coming in that the family actually could see Trevor in the area, and that they saw him go into the church located at 2301 Woodland, where they lost sight of him.
Let me ask you this, do you recall any follow-up prior to that?
Nothing specific.
Discussed with Officer Lamantia?
Nothing specific that I can think of.
If it would refresh your recollection, reviewing 12:30 interview at page 11. Looks like it's going to be about halfway down. Actually, it's your last entry and Officer Lamantia's last entry.
So there was an update. Oh, so, I'm sorry. Yes, this refreshes my recollection.
So did he receive another update?
There was an update about a text message that the mother received regarding Trevor had previously being at the house, vandalized the house, punched some holes in the walls. Yeah.
And did the update indicate where Trevor was going?
They said that they saw him go into the church at 2301 Woodland, where they lost sight of him.
I'm just curious. They like to present a witness that actually, witnessed
Lamantia,
anything.
Whether Trevor was leaving the house or not.
So he told the family that
that would be kind of nice.
He was leaving.
I seriously wonder if they're throwing the prosecution.
The update that Officer Lamantia received as he was rounding the corner.
Oh, you think they're actually just throwing?
Right, he was leaving and he was on foot.
Just politically
that he received
compelled
as
to
he was
do
rounding
it,
the corner to go southbound Carpenter.
but not really
towards
trying to
Woodland.
win.
Did
I
that
mean,
evoke in
I don't
him
know
any
what you
particular
do
thoughts
with-
regarding Mr. Seaver?
If these
I
are your
remember saying
witnesses,
that
I don't know how you
he
actually mount a genuine case.
Seaver was now out.
Yeah.
He described it as hunting the family.
By the way, Ben, what
Did
did you think
did
from that
update
little
invoke
overview?
Any thoughts?
Kind of
in
interesting.
Mr.
Yeah, it is.
Officer Lamantia regarding Trevor Seaver's thoughts towards law enforcement.
Yes.
I find it
believe I
interesting that all the news media decided to try and intervene, because that means that they know something's going on behind the scenes,
He
but they can't report it
believes that
unless they get
Trevor
the
was-
imprimatur.
Yes.
I don't remember this isn't that specific response from
That's
him
right, Kel
a little
Marie.
bit later in the interview, but he believed Trevor was looking to ambush a law enforcement officer or wanting to kill one of the officers.
Now, up to this
They
point
got
where
me.
he's rounding the corner on Briggsmore turning into Carpenter, did he indicate to you whether he did any further
I'm not going to
reading
go
of the
into
call?
greater detail of my
Not that I can
fraternity
recall.
days.
Following the Mr. Seaver leaving the house, did you talk with Officer Lamantia regarding any further update?
I mean, I remember him talking about Seaver's location and that the family was in the area. He discussed his thought process about the family being close by and believed that maybe they were trying to stay so they can help law enforcement apprehend Trevor.
Let me.
No, objection.
You indicated earlier about
Not relevant.
an update indicating the
Has
family. could
nothing
see
to do with
Trevor.
the actual
Right.
crime at issue.
Did he indicate to you whether there was any further update about them continuing to see Trevor Seaver or no longer seeing Trevor?
No, they lost sight of him.
Seaver?
Sustained.
Did he give you any further indication of whether the family could see or not see Trevor Seaver?
Objection.
So
Officer Lamantia told me that the family saw him walk into the church
Objection.
parking lot at 2301 Woodland, and they lost sight of him.
At some point, did you discuss with him whether he reached the area of Carpenter?
Honestly, at this point,
and
the defense
Woodland?
doesn't give a shit one way or the other.
Yes.
And so up to that point now, having gone down Carpenter to Woodland, did he indicate to you whether he did any further reading of the call?
Not
Objection.
that I can recall.
You talked earlier about he had spoken to another officer on the phone because that officer.
I don't know, Ben, you know better than I. At this point,
Right,
the
I believe
defense
it's
just honestly doesn't
Officer
give a
Jose
shit.
Meza.
Ask him whatever
Okay,
you
and
want.
at Carpenter and Woodland,
Let's not waste our breath.
Yeah.
discuss with, well, let me ask you this. Did you discuss with Officer Lamantia whether he saw Officer Meza at all?
Yes, he said Officer Meza had just been involved in a collision there at the intersection. He saw Meza.
Let me stop you there. Objection. Counsel won't let the witness answer the question.
That sounds good.
That's where the objection is.
What intersection?
Carpenter and Woodland.
So he saw him at the intersection of Carpenter and Woodland in a vehicle collision?
Yes.
Okay. So up until Carpenter and Woodland, what you see is Jose Meza in a car accident. Did he indicate to you whether or not he saw any other officers?
No other officers.
Okay. Did he indicate to you whether he did anything up to that point to find other officers, whether they were coming on scene?
This indicate to you, as opposed to say something to you.
Did you discuss with him
little
where he went
slimy to me.
after coming to the corner of Carpenter?
I don't like it from an evidentiary perspective.
They're trying to avoid
Yes, he
hearsay
continued
objections.
westbound on Woodland.
I know, but
Going
it's
westbound on Woodland?
a kind of scummy
What did
way
he
to do
do
it,
after turning westbound on Woodland?
and it's a little too blatant.
He said as he was getting close to the area where that church was located, he activated his body-worn camera.
They're asking for
Before you go any
hearsay
further, when you
without
say the church was
asking what
located-
somebody said. It's
We've talked about two churches, Victory Life
Right.
Center and 2301 Woodland. Can you describe us which church he was talking about when he said that?
I believe he was talking about the location where he would find the suspect, 2301 Woodland.
And did you discuss with him whether or not he entered the church?
Yes.
And what did he say in that regard?
Yes, he entered from the south driveway and began driving through the parking lot, which basically curves and wraps
because they're
around
lazy
the
about it
north
too.
side of the buildings. He described the church in pretty
Like this is
in detail,
blatantly hearsay.
its layout, the fact
What
that
did
there
he
was a
say to
large
you? Was
field
the actual
Mhm.
question asked?
open and that the driveway curved to what he described as a choke point where the buildings basically got
What
very
he
close
described,
to
what he
the
said,
driveway
all of them.
Okay. So what
But
street did he
at this
turn
point,
into
the
church
defense just
off?
doesn't give a
off
shit.
of Woodland.
Okay, and that was into a driveway or into another?
But
street?
all of that was
It's
hearsay.
a driveway.
Okay, and so to go from coming from Carpenter, so taking us back to Exhibit 1, Carpenter is off the map as we face the.
To the east, to the right, yes.
Everything you just said was hearsay.
We talked earlier before, this is the 2301, the rest of the church.
Everything that guy just said was bullshit.
Yes,
So that's the lot that he turned.
Yeah,
into.
there's that too.
yes.
Describe to you where, so he's got, there's a way to turn in at Danway Court and into the parking lot, or there's an entryway on the extreme west end of the property. Did he tell you which one of those he entered?
The extreme west end.
Like I said, that's the point.
Did you
is I don't
discuss with
even
him
care
what he
says
felt his
anymore.
responsibilities were as he turned into the church parking lot?
If anything, I'm just going to use it to impeach
Yes.
him when I actually
What
go
are
to
you
the
saying?
trial and he says something different.
We covered that very
Why not let him
extensively. But basically, he believed that he needed to find Trevor now because that he was what he described hunting the family and that he needed to apprehend Trevor.
So now he's entered on the driveway on the west side of the complex. You indicated that he drove into the complex.
Yes.
What direction would
The
that
state's
be?
still going to get his
North.
trial.
Okay.
But
And
you
he
might as well
indicated
just
to
let him
you,
talk at this point. And then when he
something
tries to
happens
say
to the road.
something, you catch him in something.
The driveway,
You can
yes,
use this
it
against him.
curves to the right, basically in an eastbound direction. And then it becomes more narrow where the buildings collapse in on the roadway.
So did he describe to you whether he rounded that corner or not?
Yes, he did.
And is it before or after the rounding of the corner that the buildings where you said could compress, I believe, onto the roadway?
It's after you make it through the curve, and you're driving in an eastbound direction.
And did he indicate to you whether he noticed the buildings compressing on the roadway?
Yes.
And did that cause him did he indicate to you whether that caused him any specific thoughts?
Yes, at that point, he described basically his belief was that Trevor got what he wanted. I remember him saying that. The fact that the buildings had now collapsed put Officer Lamantia in a choke point, which was a position where he believed Trevor was going to ambush him while he sat in his patrol car.
Did you discuss with him whether those thoughts caused any fear within himself?
Yes, he described being very afraid at that point, and I believe it was that point in the interview where he became a little bit emotional and we had to take a break.
Okay. Did he give any specific statements as to what he thought was going to happen?
He thought that Trevor was going to shoot him while he sat in his patrol car.
And how did he?
That is blatant hearsay.
I don't remember specifically what he said. I could read it.
Would it refresh your recollection to review?
It's not even here. It's beyond that.
I'm sorry.
Speculation.
It's double hearsay and speculate. It's
direct you to page 14.
It's both.
So basically,
right.
he described the fact that he was not moving fast, but he was still in a moving vehicle, and it was more or less like this is
hearsay of somebody
this is where I'm
speculating.
going to fucking die, but I can't just stop. I got to make every effort and attempt to stop him before he gets to the family. So I pulled out my pistol. I don't remember if I said it on the dash. I really don't remember. I just know that I pulled it out.
This is California, right? Do they have the rules of evidence?
Well, I do believe he's reading from a transcript now.
Yeah, I don't remember if I
Of his
said
own
that
testimony.
to me, but
You're not
I
allowed
give
to do
myself
that
a
either.
fighting chance, because I know I can't move fast enough in the vehicle to get through.
You're allowed to refresh
an
your
ambush.
recollection from a
That's right.
transcript,
Did he indicate
but you're
to
not
you
allowed to just
where
read
he
from
was,
it
whether
because the
he
transcript is hearsay.
At that point, he was still inside the vehicle.
Did he indicate to you
Oh God! So that's triple
the manner in
hearsay.
which he was traveling in the vehicle?
So you have somebody
He said
reading
slowly.
from hearsay that refers to hearsay that somebody else said. So we have triple
I think
hearsay
he
and then
said that he
speculation.
can't just stop.
Yeah.
Good job.
Is that correct?
The sanction for that is
Plus
Did he
speculation,
indicate to you whether these
double
thoughts
secret
are in
probation, of
his
course.
mind
obviously.
before the alcove or after the alcove? Before the compressed part of the building or after that?
He started having those thoughts about the ambush prior
There's video
to
out there.
reaching the alcove
chat
as he
found
was
it.
approaching it.
Did he discuss with you any thoughts he had regarding Trevor Seaver's family situation at that point?
It's relatively rare that I find triple
At
hearsay.
that point, as he was approaching the
That's
alcove,
pretty impressive.
he said that he had to continue searching for him, but he couldn't just
Okay,
stop
he
because
said anything.
he had to
The
protect the
statement
family.
should end there in court.
Now, as he approaches the point where the building compresses down on the roadway, what did he do next? What did he tell you he did next?
So
What did he
as
tell
he
you
was
next?
approaching that is when he drew his firearm, and he continued slowly in the eastbound direction, at which time he caught a glimpse of Trevor out of his passenger window.
How do you know?
And he described Trevor as being hunched over.
Did he describe how he saw Trevor hunched over out the passenger window?
No, legally you cannot in court.
He said he could only see basically his face,
All right,
but they made eye
I'm gonna
contact,
stop, but
and he knew at that point that it was
just
Trevor.
remember everything that this idiot
but
is saying
because
is
of the
absolute
fact that
hearsay.
he's sitting in a vehicle and Trevor's lower, what he described as hunched over, he can only
But
see
the
his
defense just
head
doesn't
up.
give
He
a
couldn't
fuck
see what was going on below.
The
Because
defense
of
likes it.
the
Oh,
way
yeah,
I wouldn't
it's
object
okay.
either.
on the door.
And does
It's helpful
Officer
for the
Lamantia,
defense.
at this
Right.
point, seeing Trevor Seaver, does Officer Lamantia have any specific thoughts regarding the situation that he's in at that point?
Yes, at this point, he thinks that Trevor's going to start shooting at him. So he described that he needed to continue. He couldn't just stop there because he was
That
too
can't be
close, so he
possible.
needed to
He didn't
continue
swipe right on
through.
me.
He drove a little bit further to the east and canted his vehicle slightly to the right, exited his patrol vehicle, and said he expected to have a confrontation with Trevor right there at the side of his patrol car, but that didn't happen. And
Let's break that down a
okay,
little bit.
yeah.
Robert, how
Yeah,
do
we
you
consider some
about
options.
your analysis?
I do want to link.
That's what he basically told you. Told us that he couldn't
More or
stop
less.
right there.
Right.
Um,
He couldn't
Okay.
back up, he said. I remember him saying that. Sorry.
Let's stick with the he couldn't stop right
Right.
there.
Robert might
Should
have
be
the
your-
raw feed.
what
I have it from a news feed.
problems there would be if he stopped right there?
Trevor was too close, and he would not, Officer Lamantia would not have time to react to the threat.
Would it refresh your recollection about that specific time to review your report?
Yes.
Page 15 of 42, the large paragraph at the top.
Mhm.
And I would direct your attention specifically to the line that starts, I was, and ends at that point right there. See if that refreshes your recollection.
KDB,
Okay,
the
so
body
to
cam.
expand,
link.
I'm sorry, yes,
Does that
sir.
refresh your
It
recollection?
does.
Okay.
The raw body
So-
cam. footage.
What are his thoughts if he was to stop the car right there when he sees Trevor in the alcove?
So to expand a little bit further on what I was saying, as far as his proximity, he was describing about that if I stop right here, I'm dead. And he said that he was scared, that he didn't have room to move around, and he would not be able to, again, address the threat.
Did you discuss with him his thoughts of what, at that moment, first sees Trevor, of what Trevor could do because of that distance?
There it is.
So that Trevor would have the drop on him.
Why are we having this
What do you
hearing?
mean by that?
That Trevor has the tactical advantage of being on foot.
Literally, just drop the prosecution
while
now.
Officer Lamantia is inside of a car and not really able to react to what Trevor does if he starts shooting through the. I remember him talking about the ballistic panels on our doors, but the fact that the windows are not ballistic. So if he starts shooting through the window, that I think he said something to the effect of I'm a sitting duck or something like that.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Did you discuss with him what would happen if Trevor ran around the back of the car? Or ran around the car?
In that moment when he was side by side, I remember Lamantia talking about regardless of what direction he went, that he was at
Why are we
Officer
having
Lamantia was
this
at a
hearing?
tactical disadvantage, and he would not. That Trevor would be able to shoot before he could respond.
And did he make a comment to you what would happen if Trevor ran to the front of the car?
The same. Trevor would be able to shoot him before he was able to respond.
So after having those considerations,
Bring a blanket
what did Officer Lamantia?
if you're gonna go on the Ferris wheel.
He pushed forward to get out of that specific spot where he was in close proximity to Trevor.
Welcome back,
He
Queen
didn't
Bee.
go- It's not as though he left. He only went a little bit further distance and then canted his car to the right to, I believe he described it basically to try and use the car as some sort of a shield type block the best he could while he exited his car.
Did he indicate to you?
Which means that he
I
obviously
don't
was
remember
in
the
subjective
specific
fear of
words he used.
life
but,
and limb.
He did not
Oh my God.
accelerate quickly. I don't remember exactly how he described it though.
Mr. Mayor, would this be a good time to break for this evening?
or for this procedure. I think we're done.
That was day one. That was day one.
Why
I
is
have
there a day two?
I have day two, and day three is Monday.
Why is that a thing? Why is there a day two? Why is there a day three?
So you know
Why
the
is it
outcome.
the thing? The prosecution has no case.
I'm pretty sure the prosecution established very
They got
clearly
a dead
that
body
there was
and political
subjective
pressure.
and objective fear of life and limb for the officer or others of this
I see
individual.
that. I see that, but it's certainly. I think you can clear it as a fact for the jury to hear, but I don't think you can.
I'm not
I don't
sure.
think you can win on a prosecution beyond a reasonable doubt. Not even close.
I'm not sure that gets to a jury.
I think.
I mean,
I think
obviously
that's a
it does
fair
because
question.
It always does. But let's presume for a second that we're actually legal scholars and we genuinely
Oh,
care
let's not
about the
presume that.
standards of proof.
Well, I heard from a legal
required.
scholar that just because there's a body doesn't mean there's a crime.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I did
always
learn
the
that.
case. But let's just presume that we're applying the actual laws that were taught in school. I'm pretty sure that after all of the presentation that I've seen so far from the state, this guy should just be let free.
Let's have a judge rule on that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It reminds me of the Cummings case, and I heard the opening, and I'm like, okay, somebody's dead. He shot him. All right, that's a strong opener. And then from there on down, it was just like, I'm not buying this prosecution less and less as the moments went by.
Same
thing here.
This case, every one of the prosecution's witnesses were like literally proved. Again, remember, just two elements: subjective and objective fear that the individual fleeing was a threat to the officers or some innocent person. I'm pretty sure we have that right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what you're going to do to dispel that from me.
Enough to bind it over.
That's the defense seems pretty confident with that, and I see why.
Look who
I'm
came
just
here.
not sure I'm not sure what you could argue to dispel that notion after everything that's been done. Everything has been said just in this part one.
Yep. Well, we have tomorrow, and it wasn't done. There's an expert tomorrow.
Oh, doggy.
Lovely.
They have an expert talking about the entrance and exit wounds and all this business.
Who gives
As
a
if it
shit?
matters. Like, okay, we get it. He's dead.
But none of that is legally relevant.
Right.
Was it legally a justified shooting? We know he was shot in the back. Nobody's questioning that. Nobody honestly cares whether he was shot in the back. All of that could be 100% true, but if you have subjective and objective reasonableness that he was a threat to other people, I don't care if he was shot in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if they shot him in the skull. I don't care where they shot him. None of that is relevant at all from a
Sounds like the chest and abdomen, but I mean that's just where you shoot, you know?
No,
That's for a jury, not for a judge in a prelim.
No, that actually can be for a judge in a prelim.
What
because it's a question of law, not of fact.
What kind of fur baby? What kind of fur baby are we dealing
That was
with
Ruby.
there, Ben?
You've met Ruby. A little schnauzer there.
A little schnauzer?
Yeah, she just came in and she left there. She didn't.
No, go ahead. What was the question?
But still.
She stomped out.
Yes.
She's had enough of this.
She's jealous, yes.
3-hour prelim.
Jealous of the attention I was giving you guys.
No, my point is, I actually think that this is a question as a matter of law. I actually don't think.
Valerie, I saw what you did there.
I think the judge could make that call. It's just that they don't.
There's a lot of external pressure, and I understand that.
Right, they might.
What judge is going to think that?
I just want to leave it for a jury, and then all the pressure's off me.
Yes, of course, but I'm saying, like, from a pure legalistic point, I think this is a question of law, and I think that I already know the answer to it.
Yeah, very cool. All right, you got a stream starting?
Yeah. So can I shoot the link into the private chat and have somebody? You can have somebody pump it out. I don't know how to
private chat is to us.
All right, let's say.
So go ahead.
I don't know. I don't know how any of this stuff,
here we are.
I don't know how any of this stuff works.
Clearly. The problem is you got a shitty mentor.
Chat, and then
Ain't that the truth? I can relate.
Leave me alone. I'm doing my best.
All right, and Ben, I see you. I see you're telling war stories over on your channel. Everybody go over there. Go like and subscribe. Viva Las Vegas, J. Rabine Law.
Yes, laws with a W at Viva Las Vegas
with a W and a Z, like delete laws. Okay, no, not like
no
delete
Z.
laws.
No.
But yeah, come check it out. It's kind of an interesting case. It's out of Indiana, where it's a weird double homicide of two teenagers that, for whatever reason, the prosecutor wants to keep all the records sealed, and so we're
Not the run of the mill double homicide.
Well, what is the
There
running?
you go. No Z.
But it's very strange and fighting to tooth and nail. So we're going to go through kind of how this whole thing is going down. But it's very strange that 5 years after the alleged murders, they're still trying to keep all of the records sealed.
Somebody's covering for somebody, no doubt about it.
That's the only thing that I can imagine. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting.
Right, like, and I know nothing about it. Like, I'm not connected into Indiana, so that's that. But like, that much is clear.
Yeah,
it's got to be something like that. If either of you would like to join, I'm probably going to take maybe 2 minutes, real quick, before I go. But I will. I'll send you guys both a link.
All right, I'll stop by.
Right.
I might need to throw something in my mouth first here to eat.
Yeah, no worries. I don't think it's going to be particularly long.
I had a piece of smoked salmon.
It's just kind of interesting and weird.
All right, cool.
All right,
sounds good.
Sweet.
Ben, shoot me a DM because I don't think I have yours on Twitter, and I'll shoot you a link, or I'll put it in the private chat.
He's not on Twitter. He's on Blue Jeans.
All right, so I have in the private chat. So that's your link to join the stream. So I'm going to be starting that in probably about 2 minutes. So anybody who wants to come over and hear about that sort of weird story, we'll do that in, well, let's say 6:34 Eastern, and we'll go from there.
6:34. That's like military precision
or
on this.
6:35.
All right, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it.
See you guys.